What will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
The sweet emotion raining all over me. I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again.
The Constitution says treason is punishable by death. You've accused your adversaries of treason. Who specifically are you accusing of treason?
Well, I think a number of people, and I think what you look is that they have unsuccessfully tried to take down the wrong person. These are corrupt politicians, fake news, the Comeys of the world, all of the bad things that went on. It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. That's treason. That's treason.
He is a criminal. He's a criminal. He got caught. Read his laptop. And you know who's a criminal? You're a criminal for not reporting it. You are a criminal for not reporting it. Joe Biden is a criminal, and he's been a criminal for a long time. And you're a criminal in the media for not reporting it.
That's treason. That's treason. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. That's treason. That's treason. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense, and President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. That's treason. That's treason.
Awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton
Issued executive orders keeping open Guantanamo Bay. They wanted to close it. I want to keep it open and use it for the rest. But should she lose, we'll have an insurance policy and we'll get this guy out of office. And that's what they said, and that's what they meant. That's treason. That's treason. They say, holy shit, they caught us. They caught us.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
And they know judgment day shall come.
The outlet pass for Keller, a defenseman. Nice move, cuts to the net, score! Megan Keller, the overtime hero, the United States, wins gold in Milan.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday, February 19th, 2026. Welcome back to News Treason Channel 17 and our bi-weekly situation briefing with the one and only Patriot Underground. Let me say two things real quick. First of all, congratulations to the United States women's hockey team winning gold over in Milan. And I would like to be the first one to formally wish a very happy 66th birthday to the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew. What a day, Patriot. How are you, brother?
Oh, wow. That was a great intro, man. Yeah, it was a pretty exciting news day today. We're going to break it all down for you folks. But yeah, it's always a pleasure to get together for these bi-weekly chats that we do. And we always are kind of marveling at the fact that the conversation, even though we don't really plan it to the same degree that we do with other guests, it always ends up kind of just finding itself somewhere throughout the course of our discussion. And I really value that. And I know you do too. So I'm here for it, man. Let's get into it. Should be a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys all for jumping in. Everybody over on Patriot Underground, over here on News Treason, wherever you're watching. Thank you guys for being with us and for all your support. Before we jump into it, we were having a kind of an interesting conversation backstage. I think we both kind of mentioned it a couple weeks ago on our last show. We were both kind of discussing, you know, as we often do, this process that we all go through. That I think a whole lot of the rest of the world is being very quickly dumped into over the last few weeks. But this awakening process, and especially if you're an Anon, you've been following this, and you know, you were the first one to say it. And I thought about it. I had to agree with you that, you know, as much as we've seen it takes, I think, years of looking at these drops and all the different world events to get to a point where you're just, you know, comfy, as we say. You don't know exactly how it's going to play out. You don't know the complete details of what's going to play out, but the overall picture you get comfortable with. And I think you even said it was kind of really over the last year that you got to really a complete place of comfort. And I think when I thought about it, I kind of said the same thing. And, you know, you have that great analogy you use of kind of the chef with all the different pots on the giant stove, and kind of how they take narratives and they move them from the front burner to the back burner and back and forth. And I was thinking about it, and I was saying to you, it's really over only, when I'm honest with myself, it's really only been probably the last few months, where it used to be we track all these narratives, and I was kind of watching one, just like waiting to see, okay, like where I need to know where this is going to go. I need to know what's going to happen next. And then eventually you kind of shift to just realizing that you're on a roller coaster, and things are going to come in and out. You know, look, a month ago, we were sitting here just all things Minneapolis, all things National Guard, all things Insurrection Act. And, you know, that was coming off of Venezuela. And then, you know, we were waiting on narratives about 2020, and that's sitting out there. And then Epstein gets dropped, which completely changed, in my opinion, the trajectory of the narrative across the world.
Oh, yeah.
And we're sitting here today, and bang, Prince Andrew comes out of nowhere on his birthday. I mean, so I guess I just realized where, you know, I no longer get married to the different narratives. I kind of just get up every day and I'm like, well, something's going to happen. There's going to be something that goes on today or this week that we need to pay attention to. I don't know what it is, but I'm here for it.
I hear you, man. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. As a matter of fact, today's the 19th. A couple days ago, of course, was Q Day. And I was thinking, wow, this is really kind of strange, because normally on the 17th, there's something big, right? And to my recollection, I mean, there's always something happening every day. And I guess you could say that we've been conditioned to sort of redefine what we think of as big news, because so much has happened and we've been covering these nonstop psyops for such a long time. And I said, wow, that's a little bit strange. And then my second thought was, just wait like another day or so. I'm telling, I feel like something is gonna, yeah. And boom, here we are with Prince Andrew. But to your point, which we're going to discuss in detail tonight, but yeah, it really is for Anons. It's pattern recognition of the way that they're rolling out this entire movie, this entire script. And you and I were talking backstage, and we talked a little. You mentioned the chef analysis, the metaphor that I use to kind of frame my analysis, where the White Hat Productions, the military is producing this banquet, this unbelievably epic meal for the public, but they're doing it in courses, and it's almost like you're standing there in one of those open window kitchens watching them prepare the meal, and like 1 minute something's right in front of you, and the next minute they put it back and they put something in front, something else. And then I said, well, it's also like, I mean, if you want to stick with the movie metaphor, because we are watching a scripted movie, or you can liken it to a very complex, artistically, brilliantly conceived screenplay, where you're watching, and we actually mentioned a couple different examples when we were talking. It's like you start watching this one narrative and you get really sucked into it, and you just can't wait to find out where it's going to go, what's going to happen next. And then all of a sudden it cuts to a completely different subplot in the same movie or the same TV show. And somehow either throughout the movie or throughout the series, they end up weaving it all together seamlessly. And there's just an incredible genius behind it. So for all of us, I think that we're getting back to that pattern recognition thing we talk about all the time, generally in the context of the public perception. For Anons, we've started to learn, probably over the past year, 6 months, who knows, maybe there are people who learned it a lot longer ago than that. But the notion that you're just going to see a narrative continue to play out without any interruption or without any other side plots coming in and taking the stage, if you want to look at it that way, whether social media, mainstream media, it's like this giant stage, and White Hat Productions, 4POG are just they're calling the shots. They're like the stage director back there. And so we've come to learn that it just doesn't work that way. Whether it's, I mean, I can go back even to last summer. Was it last summer or the summer before, where the Marines were mobilized from Camp Pendleton and everyone was getting precipice vibes? People were talking about it. There was the LA stuff going on, the No Kings.
I think it was last summer. Yeah.
I think it was last summer. Right. And everyone was like, man, this feels like really precipice-y. And, we're getting really excited about it. And then, of course, the inevitable happened, which was something else. I mean, that fizzled out, and then something else took its place. And it's just like rinse, repeat. We go through that process over and over again. So eventually, you're right. You get to a place where you just say, okay, I'm just going to accept the way that they're conducting this grand show for all of us, knowing that we may not get the answers that we're seeking today, no matter how badly we want them. We don't get the, like in the context of the movie, you want to see the dramatic conclusion. You want to see how it all works out, where all the pieces fit together. You're going to get there eventually, but they keep peppering in more side plots, subplots, different narratives that all somehow connect to this grand story. So it's coming to fruition. You can track it on a daily basis, but eventually you just have to resign yourself to knowing that that's just the way that it goes. And like you said, you wake up every day, you don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. And I mean, really, when's the last time we had a slow news day? How do we even define slow news day at this point? I mean, it's radically different.
You can define it as Sunday morning at 3 a.m. That's
basically right.
Slow news. Well, you know what? You just made me think of something, to your point, right? You're 100% right. But I think also what happens is some people would say, well, everything you just described, right? See, you guys, you got us all riled up, with No Kings and LA and precipice, and then nothing happened. But then if you stop and you don't get emotional about the fact that nothing happened, and now let's look back, right? Because that was about 7-8 months ago. Well, I would argue no narrative is ever wasted. We didn't see it at the time. It came and then it stopped. But what has come out of that? No, there wasn't an EBS. No, there wasn't mass arrest. No, they didn't take over cities. But what did come out of that? That entire situation in LA and No Kings and everything else, which morphed into Minneapolis and all of it.
Right.
What has come out of it? Well, you've had this mass narrative being pushed out there that, hey, these protests you're seeing are not organic. And No Kings was mapped back to Soros and Buffett and Arabella Advisors and all these other people. And people are getting to discuss that now. In fact, I was just I'm doing a new finance show with Patrick and Eric Carlson on Sunday, and we were chatting the other day, and he was saying he's a financial advisor, so he's still got to kind of go out in the normie world and go to conferences. And he was saying he was in Orange County in LA, and he said he got in an Uber with a driver. Actually, the guy didn't even speak English that well. And somehow they got on the subject of what was going on. And he said, oh, these aren't protests. Not Eric, the driver. He's like, these aren't protests. He goes, this is all orchestrated. These are paid. They get paid. They get paid by the government, but they get paid by big business. Like, so you have to sometimes just let the narrative pass, not sit there and take your ball and go home and say nothing happened. Just say, all right, let me revisit this in a month or 2 months or 3 months. Because very often something comes back around, or you may look at something. Yeah, it's not what you wanted or what it looked like the where the movie was going to take you. But just like any other good movie, it has a twist. And you sit there, you look back, that makes sense now. And I think last summer and even into what's taking place, same thing with Minneapolis, right? That just faded out. Early December, January, everyone thought, all right, well, here comes nope. Tom Homan goes in and goes, by the way, we got about 100% of the counties to cooperate with us. Nothing to see here. And we move on. He said, well, that was wasted. But it wasn't. No. It wasn't, because it all fed into the same thing, which started with Doge and, and all the stuff that took place in the spring. So it's been this entire year of exposure. It's just not what we thought was going to happen. But doesn't mean it's not important to the Great Awakening.
Well, yeah. And like we said, this is being augmented. This whole plan is being augmented by a level of artificial intelligence, bare minimum, that it goes far beyond anything that we've actually been exposed to such a degree that they can meticulously plot out this movie that's literally, we're talking about over a decade now, depending on your opinion of when this whole thing all started, in terms of just in terms of the operation, or the plan going operational. We trace it back to at least 2012. But then, of course, there's the whole conversation about post-JFK's death. That's going back decades. So how were they able to meticulously plot this and plan this out and have everything weave together so perfectly? Well, I think that's a piece of the puzzle. There is a creative genius behind, we referenced the Vince Gilligan, the guy who wrote Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. He's a brilliant writer, and how he's able to tie all these different loose ends together. But this is a whole different level. This is an entirely different level. So, when people say nothing happened, and this in some ways ties back into the conversation I think we were having last time, when you had said, you'd ask the sort of general question of, well, what are we waiting for? And what does that mean to different people? When people say nothing happened, that's usually a reflection of the expectation that they had that didn't get met. It's never, there's not been a single time, like you said, no psyop has been wasted. None of these events have not served a purpose. It's just that we don't immediately recognize what that purpose is. And so often we have to apply that 48-hour, 72-hour rule, because we've learned, this is something else, it took me a while to get there, to not get triggered emotionally when things happen, and allow it to suck me back into the optics of the movie. But that's generally the way I interpret that. When people say nothing happened, what they really mean by that is that they were expecting that this event that was playing out was going to lead to the conclusion of the movie within a matter of days, or maybe a matter of weeks, and that it wasn't going to get interrupted by another plot line. But we always have to keep that in mind, is that when you go and whether you sit down to watch a TV series, or whether it's you go to the movie theater to watch a movie, you have to wait until the end to see the conclusion. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And yeah, we can sit here all day and we can gripe about the fact that it's been years and years that we've been watching this movie. I get it. I'm not here to sugarcoat that. It's not been easy. But the one thing I hope that we can agree upon is that the longer the movie goes on, the more depth and the more genius, the more texture it has. And whenever the conclusion finally arrives, we'll be able to look back, just like Mike King always says, things happen in real time. And it's often that we have to wait a period of months before we look back on it and we go, oh, okay, that makes sense why they did it that way. And divorce ourselves from our expectations and just sit back, relax, enjoy the show, try not to get emotional, protect your mind. I mean, it's easier said than done, and we all have our moments, but that's generally what we've had to come to, the conclusion we've had to arrive at. If you're going to successfully navigate this epic 5th generation war that's completely unprecedented and that doesn't come with a set of instructions, you eventually you have to arrive at these certain conclusions, and you have to be at peace with them. It doesn't make it easy, but it certainly makes it easier than getting I talk to people all the time in my chat room. I'm like, don't set yourself up for these disappointments. I have people posting all the time that, oh, the EBS is coming in, any second. And I'm just like, you got to get away from that type of a mentality, at least in my opinion, if you're going to be able to successfully navigate this and not lose your mind in the process, because we really don't know. We hope that it's going to be in the not too distant future where all this stuff comes together. But we also thought the same thing and hoped the same thing back in 2022, 2021, 2023. So you just don't know.
You're absolutely right, man. You're absolutely right. And always remind everybody, I think I speak for both Patriot and I, when we say that about managing your expectations and not expecting certain things, whatever it may be, EBS, med beds, arrests, whatever it is, like, we're speaking from a place of experience. Like,
of course,
we're not better than anybody. I know from knowing you for years now, we've both been there. Joe Rambo would tell you, he's been there. Everyone's been there at a point where you're every day or every week waiting for something in the weekends, and that thing doesn't come. And eventually you just morph into, like Derek Johnson would say, in the military, embrace the suck. Like, it just is what it is. But look, let's just take a look at what happened today. And for those of you, I know we all share a lot of audience that watched us earlier on Joe's channel on the roundtable. We did touch on Prince Andrew. We're going to touch on it again, but there's a bunch more stuff that even happened while we were on the air. The Les Wexner, of all things, deposition was dropped at about 4:00 this afternoon. Huge. We're going to get into that. But, let's acknowledge what we talked about last time, and it's only escalated since with what took place today. In 2021 or 2022, when we were in the depths of the faux Biden psyop, right? And we would all do, I was listening to you at the time. Any of us would have done anything to get out of the doldrums of that situation. Like, just stop and think, if in the middle, if we're in February 2022 or 23, if in the middle of that whole thing, while Trump's not optically in office and everything, the news had come on and said, breaking news, Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, has been arrested for his connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Tell me that would have not broken the internet in Anon world, right? Yeah. We would have been on the air. We'd have been doing 5-hour podcasts, everybody high-fiving. Well, that just happened today. And it happened while the entire world is openly discussing for weeks now. And it's, no one could say it's no one's seeing it, only certain group. No, it's go to TikTok, go to teenagers, they're all discussing Epstein. In fact, I've had a lot of parents tell me in the movement that their kids in their 30s and 20s and even late teens are discussing it with more shock than some of the adults.
I heard some kids talking about jerky the other day when I was standing in line. These were like high school age kids, 15, 16 years old. And they were talking about Epstein and jerky and what that meant. Right. Pizza. I mean, so yeah, it is. It's happening everywhere. I can certainly vouch for that.
Right. So, look, when's somebody going to get arrested? Well, we just had a British royal arrested this morning for the first time since the 1600s. Let me repeat that. For the first time since the 1600s. Now, also keep in mind, like, I'm not just saying a high up royal, meaning it's a member of the royal family, right? So you have to understand, some of those powerful people in the world, they can do whatever they want with impunity and not get arrested. So, like, what does that tell you?
King's brother. Right? King's brother.
Right. There's no world in which some local PD just goes in and like they didn't even give him the chance to turn himself in, right? Which is what would happen in a power structure. Okay, they negotiate. Nope, this guy just got taken in. So let me just play, because I know most people are up to speed. I'll play the latest. This is about 5 p.m., 6 p.m. update on what they're talking about, and then we could jump into it.
Sure.
That is next, but first I have a Fox News alert here. The royal family rocked after Britain's former Prince Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He faces accusations of sending confidential government documents to Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go right to Stephanie Bennett. She's in London with the latest. Hi, Stephanie.
Good evening, all. Yeah, it's been a very busy day across London and across the world with these headlines. Today, in fact, marking his 66th birthday. Take a look at some of these images we've received later this evening. Now, these are of Andrew, of course, being released from police custody in Aylsham almost 12 hours after his arrest. You can see him lying back in the seat to avoid cameras. Well, Thames Valley police say he has been released under investigation. They didn't release any further details than that. Of course, he was arrested this morning around 8 a.m. local time at the Sandringham estate. Police were seen searching the property and also at the Royal Lodge in Windsor, where, of course, he lived before being stripped of his royal titles last year. The arrest comes after Thames Valley police said they were investigating claims that while serving as a UK trade envoy, Andrew shared confidential government documents with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew, of course, has always denied any wrongdoing. King Charles III, Andrew's older brother, released a statement saying in part, quote, "What now follows is the full, fair and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. In this, as I have said before, they have our full and wholehearted support and cooperation. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course." Now, despite all of this, the king carrying on with his royal duties today, attending an event ahead of London Fashion Week. He did not answer any reporters' questions. President Trump also commented this afternoon saying it's so bad for the royal family, it's very sad to me. Now, of course, misconduct in public offense carries a potential maximum sentence of life in prison. Keeping a close eye on all of this. Back to you guys.
But before we go to commentary, let me just say something, because watching the chat, and please understand I'm not being critical of anybody, but I saw at least 4 or 5 people that asked this question. When are they going to talk about the first arrest will shock the world? Folks, there is no Q drop that talks about the first arrest will shock the world. There's a Q drop that talks about the first indictment will engage a mass pop awakening. There's a drop that says the scope of what's coming to something like that will shock the world. There's no address. There's no actual drop. It does not say the first address will shock the world. That's something that has come out of podcasters and truthers and videos and things like that. So that's why we don't talk about that. But Patriot, your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I believe it's the first arrest will verify action and confirm future direction, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's the enormity of what's coming that will shock the world. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, important to mention that. But for all the people who have been saying, well, when are we going to see arrests? Well, like we just saw the brother of the King of England get arrested. So I don't think that there's any denying that this is an absolutely massive development on the world stage. It's timed perfectly with the release of it was on January 30th, I believe, was the date where they released that whole trench of Epstein files, and now here we are. Okay, after many years, and this is also connected to what we were just talking about in terms of the way that they roll this stuff out. It's not as if the world woke up shocked today because there was information about Prince Andrew. This has been going on for years. This guy, a former Prince Andrew, now it's just Andrew, what is it, Mountbatten, Windsor, or something like that?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, okay, so former Prince Andrew, this guy has been dragged under the microscope to at least to a degree, even on the screens of mainstream media now, going back to 2018, 2019. So this is, and think about that. Here we are in 2026. And I could be a little bit off with my timeline there, but right around the time when Epstein was arrested and he, quote unquote, killed himself and all that, there was Prince Andrew was all over the mainstream media. So it took a long time. Point being, it took a long time to break down his reputation. It wasn't like they just went in and arrested him. They stripped his titles. They essentially excommunicated him from the royal family before we arrived at the date of this arrest, which is interesting in and of itself, as you know, because it happened on his 66th birthday. And my understanding is that there were first I thought it was 6 a.m. where they rolled up there, but I guess it was 8 a.m. local time in the UK. But I'm hearing that there were 6 police cars.
I heard that too. Yeah.
So, if you're looking for another 6 there, there you go. But 66 would be interesting enough in and of itself. And no doubt this is a major, major puzzle piece that's now being, it's sliding into place by the white hats. And this is going to just further unravel this worldwide conspiracy. So this is an absolutely incredible moment to witness. Whether or not this is the first arrest that Q was referring to that we just mentioned a moment ago, I don't know. We could certainly talk about that. We could speculate about that, but it certainly seems to me as if it's verifying action. And I would argue that it's confirming future direction.
I would agree.
If this guy gets arrested, and I think probably most importantly of all, that nobody is above the law. If they can arrest former Prince Andrew and perp walk the guy, essentially. I don't think they actually did that, but we're seeing the picture of him like trying to avoid the cameras, like laid back there. It's just hysterical. Then that means it's open season on politicians, on business moguls, on celebrities, on and on and on, everybody else that's wrapped up in this sordid web of evil. We both know that Epstein himself was just a puppet. And Q talked about this on multiple occasions. Epstein was not the primary target. But that being said, and we can certainly dissect this a little bit further, the fact that we have a family member of a royal family member arrested, like you said, for the first time since the 1600s, literally centuries since this has happened, folks, is in no way something that we can overstate in terms of significance. And ultimately what's going to happen, in my view, as this continues to play out on multiple different fronts that, like we talked about, we're used to these, it's like the grand stage of the social media, mainstream media, all the different information dispensing tools at the disposal of the white hats. It's going to play out on all these different fronts. Is we're going to watch the public understand that essentially the principles behind blackmail. What does it mean to actually use leverage against people? I always go back to what Kash Patel and Elon Musk repeated many times, which is that the public is being educated. That's what this whole process is all about.
Yep.
We oftentimes take for granted the things that we know that the general public doesn't. So they're getting a crash course education right now. Blackmail, using leverage, specifically how the puppet masters behind the scenes, most of whom are unknown to the public, have been actually pulling the strings of all of these different intelligence agencies in order to consolidate power and control for hundreds of years. So as we always say, this is an incredible time to be alive, man. I'm just so blown away in a sense. Like we always anticipated these types of moments would come, but when I saw it, when you actually see that the event's playing out, or the replay of the event is manifesting, it's like, holy crap. This is big. Yeah. This is huge.
Yeah, dude, you said 2 perfect things there, in my opinion. Number one, I want to read something I wrote today that plays right off what you're saying. The public is being educated. The second piece, which we kind of touched on the roundtable today, I'm not going to go completely back into it, is the notion of, well, wait a second. He wasn't arrested for child trafficking. He was arrested for selling state secrets. Well, hold on for a second. Number one, let's point out, if there's 600,000 sealed indictments in the United States, and this is a worldwide alliance, what's sealed in other countries? Keep that in your mind. So secondly, as we said, the things that are really bad would be still under the sealed indictments. But by weaving it with Epstein, you get the shock value of Pizzagate, trafficking, women, eating babies, all those terrible things. But then you weave in the selling of state secrets, and now you're starting to get into the network that Patriot was just outlining, right? If they had just said, well, we're arresting him because he raped women, that's bad. But then you're losing that narrative of, hold on, this is intelligence agencies, this is world government, this is world finance. It's all of it. And I wanted, to that point, just let me highlight 2 things very quick before I play this clip. This is what we're talking about here. The last time a British royal was arrested was during the 17th century. Interesting. English Civil War. King Charles I was captured by parliamentary forces, effectively an arrest in 1647 to 1648 before his trial and execution. Can't understate that. And then, as you said, the second piece, here's just a couple of the drops where he appears. Told you back in 19, Prince Andrew is deeply connected. And if you think it's a coincidence that he was arrested on his 66th birthday, I don't really know what else to tell you on that one. That is about as big of a middle finger as the White Hats could give to the royal family as anything. But let me play this clip, Patriot, and then I want to read what I wrote because it's going to piggyback off of exactly what you said. But I thought, and again, why do we look to Fox News so much? Anybody that's new, this has been demonstrated over at least the last 5-6 years. It is very clearly one of the places that the White Hats use to kind of set the narrative. So when something like this happens, that's why we listen to these guys, because it's woven into the drops. There's good reason for it. So listen to what is being discussed now. And again, just try to, as you listen to this, try to think back to what was being discussed on these channels just 3-4 years ago and understand how far we've come. Take a listen to this.
The reality is that we have been faced, I think, with a reckoning opportunity that the elite in this world, not country in this world, are frankly perverted and have been used to for quite some time a power structure and an opportunity for perversion unfettered at the hands of an entire class of people that have no means to defend themselves, to protect themselves, or to have a voice. And so all of these victims, the countless victims, because we only know the tip of the iceberg, have been inundated and silenced by things like NDAs. They do not have the means for representation or any kind of advocacy. So for anyone that thinks the buck stops with simply Epstein, and by the way, the questions that you raise, there are so many, Paul, the questions of influence and relationship and leverage and access. Why is this person in the CIA? Why is this person fostering Bill Clinton, a former president, going into and killing stories in Vanity Fair and so much more? So to go back to my point, for anyone that thinks the buck stops with or remains with simply the disgraced Andrew and the horrific monster Epstein, I think they are missing the entire point, which is that there are multiple countries and countless individuals that have preyed on so many women and thought that $100,000 and killing a story would somehow make it right. It will never be right, and unfortunately, I don't know if it will be even in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Sounds like she's been reading the boards, huh? So I just want to read. I want to read this very quickly, and then I want to get your commentary. But like, she just said two very important things. She said twice. She said, "If anyone thinks the buck stops with Epstein," goes right to what you just said before, from the boards. And then she's talking about world influence and global power structure. So I actually posted that clip, and this is what I wrote. It's just easier for me to read it than try to remember it from memory. So I wrote, "A global reckoning. The public will learn this goes way beyond Epstein. Q drop 4565. Possible Epstein was a puppet, not the main person of interest. Financed by whom or what F entities? F equals foreign." And then I have the quote from Emily Campani. "We've been faced with a reckoning opportunity that the elite in this world, not country, in this world are frankly perverted and have been used for quite some time to a power structure and opportunity for perversion unfettered. Epstein was never the main player, but a small node inside something much larger, we were told. And common sense dictates this based on patterns and historical intelligence tradecraft. History shows that blackmail, sexual compromise, and addiction have been used by intelligence agencies around the world as tools of leverage and control. That's not conspiracy theory, it's documented practice. Epstein wasn't the architect, he was a facilitator, a mechanism for gathering leverage on politicians, royalty, financiers, Hollywood, and global influencers. But the real power wasn't the face we saw, but the entities operating behind the scenes, also in Q drop 4565. Sometimes it's the people in the background that are of greater significance. Agencies such as CIA, Mossad, and the Five Eyes link structures benefited from influence networks like this. The names no one knows. The uber elites of the world, the puppet masters, benefited from influence networks like this. The renewed focus on Epstein isn't random. Trump, the military, the White Hats are intentionally amplifying this topic to educate the public about how trafficking, blackmail, and influence networks operate at elite levels, not as a partisan issue, but as a systems issue. This is just the start. The broader notion, once the public understands how leverage works, they'll start questioning whether similar networks operate internationally across government, finance, media, and intelligence communities. They will see how it's all connected. They will be shown this goes far beyond Epstein, far beyond borders, above the level of government. History shows power protects itself. Influence often operates quietly. The people in the background are sometimes more important than the visible face. Epstein may have been the scandal, but the structure behind him is the real story. Coming soon to a theater near you.
Awesome post. Love that.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
That's exactly what she said in there. And to me, that's why they're doing this the way they are. They're tying it to state secrets. And listen to what she just said. Your thoughts, bro?
Well, I think you said it pretty much perfectly, but I will attempt to add to that a little bit. One of the things that struck me, I'll go back a little bit, when I started digging through the files and I started reading everybody's, all the other nons, what they had come up with, was that we always knew that Epstein, that it went far beyond child trafficking, and but this guy was absolutely into everything, to such a degree that when I started seeing all this stuff, I mean, he was literally connected to everybody. He was involved with everything, whether it was like, financial stuff or planning pandemics or talking about pushing transgender ideology. I mean, all of these emails that have come out have shown that he was deeply connected to everything. So it doesn't really surprise me all that much that the basis for his arrest was, essentially, was it mishandling? Is that what they called it? Misconduct, excuse me, in public office, which is not a small deal there. I mean, we're talking about, I think you mentioned, we're talking about potentially life in prison for that type of stuff. So, it's very interesting that the way that they put this together, because we've been saying all along, or I should say the way that they presented this to the public, because we've been saying all along, the whole purpose of this movie is to get the target audience to start to make connections on their own. Like they've all heard about Prince Andrew going back years now and his connections to Epstein. And one would have assumed that when his arrest finally happened, that it would be related to sex crimes, but they actually brought him in for something entirely different. That's not insignificant. They want the public to let it marinate and to be able to make the connections on their own, to be able to see, okay, wait a second, this guy Epstein. Yeah, he was a horrible, pedophile, sex offender and all this stuff. And he was, blackmailing people. We haven't really gotten too deep into that yet. That's going to come, I think, a little bit later, but I think the public has been generally prepped with that stuff, but now they're getting that whole added layer of all the other stuff that Epstein was involved with, which I think is really, really important.
Yep.
And, in terms of the whole timing of this thing, I mean, this isn't nothing that the white hats do is chaotic, or nothing it's coincidence. It's all controlled narrative progression. We know that, right? So the charge of misconduct in public office, of course, it ties directly to newly revealed emails from that massive Epstein file dump on January 30th, where he allegedly, my understanding anyway, is that he forwarded confidential UK trade reports going back to like 2010 or something like that, when he took all of these trips as an envoy to places like Vietnam and Hong Kong and Singapore and all this types of stuff. He forwarded all that confidential information directly to Epstein. And so it's kind of brilliant the way that the white hats are scripting this thing. It's a very clean corruption hook. It's not the explosive sex trafficking, pedophilia allegations right out the gate that we probably would have anticipated if we were writing the script, right? But
Right.
the logs, the flights, the testimonies, all that stuff, I believe, is being queued for a later date. And but it was certainly enough for them to justify showing up at his residence and putting him in handcuffs and raiding multiple different properties and bringing him into custody without triggering an immediate royal collapse panic. That's not what they wanted. Like, they wanted it to be to play out exactly the way it is. But the pacing, and Q told us timing is everything. So the pacing is absolutely masterful. You have and when you think about it too, from the perspective of like us over here in the US watching this play out in the UK, because I'm sure you saw this today. People were going, well, why the hell aren't they arresting anyone here in the United States? You know, what if they can arrest a former prince, on and on and on. And that's also part of the PSYOP as well. Don't kid yourself, right?
Yeah.
Dominoes. Go ahead. I'll let you pipe in here.
No, you're exactly right. And I think logically what's going to happen is we've been presented with two people, Andrew and Mendelsohn, who were literally committing treason in their own country by selling secrets and giving. And I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Yep.
So, logically at some point, people are going to say, oh, wait a second. If this dude was everywhere and we had people in the UK selling secrets, who were the guys in the United States selling the secrets? And what I think is really interesting, I was mentioning this today. First of all, let me address one thing very quickly. I knew this was going to come in the chat. Love you guys. It's a fair question. Let me address it. I saw a few people say, yeah, whatever. Fox News is saying that, but not a lot of the normies don't watch Fox News. Please understand, we didn't say because Emily Compagno said it that the whole world's going to know it tomorrow. That's not what we said. What we said is they give you, when you listen to Fox, they're giving you the lessons that people will eventually need to learn. What she said is a summary of what the people will eventually learn. Doesn't mean that they get it today. They're all going to get it tomorrow. I was highlighting that as literally what she's saying is something almost directly from the boards. That is the lesson that these narratives over the next few weeks and months are going to point people towards. So just keep that in mind. I well understand that just because Emily Capano said it at 5 o'clock today doesn't mean everyone's going to know it tomorrow. That's not what I said. But going back to what you were saying, first of all, actually, Patriot, let me go through this. This is just in the last, as you said, the last 3 weeks or so since this stuff came out. We obviously, these are resignations, arrests, things like that. I was just going through AI trying to get a list. This is obviously not exhaustive, but it'll highlight the point. Obviously, we said Andrew. You had, as we highlighted, Lord Peter Mendelsohn resigned from the House of Lords and the Labor Party after scrutiny and Epstein ties. And again, he's the one that had been basically caught on at least 3 or 4 different occasions giving away state secrets to Epstein for financial gain. Morgan McSweeney, Keir Starmer's chief of staff, resigned. Tim Allen, the prime minister's director of communications, resigned. Miroslav Lacek, Slovakia, resigned. Let's keep going here. Kathy Rumler, Goldman Sachs, chief counsel, also Obama fixer, resigned. Thomas Pritzker, cousin of J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, the head of Hyatt Hotels, stepped down, resigned. Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem resigned as CEO of DP World. Brad Karp resigned as chairman after Epstein-related communications were reported. Rebecca Park, Archie Norman, Benjamin Wegg, a global counsel, resigned. What else? David Ross of the School of Visual Arts in New York resigned. Johanna Rubinstein, Swedish UNHCR organizational leadership, resigned. Casey Wasserman, the LA 28 Olympics chair, talent agency head, said she will sell talent agency. Steve Tisch, owner of the Giants, he's in there. You get the idea. There's a whole lot of people in here. But going back to the first slide, you see there's already 1, 2, 3, 4 major people, Andrew and 3 others in the UK. And what's curiously missing from there so far is anybody from the United States government, right?
That's right.
So what I'm wondering, Patriot, I just want to throw this out to you as a theory, something we were tossing around today. I think we've all, look, there's a bunch of the early Q drops that kind of set the stage saying that POTUS won't be addressing a lot of these things as people begin to be indicted for optical purposes.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to things like Epstein, we've always kind of said, well, they're going to put stuff out there. The evidence is going to come out. Maybe the military will handle it. We focus on the United States, but I'm just throwing it out there. It seems like right now, and again, this could change tomorrow, seems like a lot of the fallout is blowing back into the UK. What if, and I don't know, what if it's the UK that leads the charge on declassing this stuff?
It could be. It could absolutely be. I mean, and this is what I was referring to, and it's yet another example of a twist in the script that we're being presented. We've all recognized for a very long time that the United States is I guess, ground zero, if you want to call it that, for this battle to take down the cabal because of President Trump, because of the United States military taking the lead role. But we also have recognized for a long time that this is a worldwide military alliance. This is not just something that exists within the United States. So once again, it gives us occasion to question our assumptions about how this is all going to play out and to speculate perhaps in different directions. But the fact that there are foreign dominoes that are falling before domestic ones is a pretty big deal. And it was also there was one of the leaders in Norway, I can't remember his name, who stepped down. I think there's an active probe going on in France as well. So there's multiple different European countries who optically appear to be taking this much more seriously and moving much more aggressively to arrest people, to bring them to justice, to force resignations, et cetera, et cetera. Not that resignations aren't happening here in the U.S. Again, we're talking about the optics of the movie. Dave and I agree, and I'm sure everyone, for the most part in the audience, believes what we do, that we're watching a replay, and that the justice is already. That's why we don't get too upset about needing to see we need to see the justice in the end game. I've been very clear about that. And I know Dave agrees with me, but we're not sitting here worried about whether or not that these individuals are going to be brought to justice. So just kind of putting that out there. But you've got this international situation going on. And, King Charles is coming out and saying the law has to take its course. I mean, that's not really a neutral statement. It's kind of aligning with the optics, like they're under cooperation. They're cooperating as all of these black hat elements get purged. And so, this is a scene in the movie, if you will, that's red pilling billions of people out there. If the royal family can be raided and cuffed, the whole house of cards crumbles, and it primes outrage for the next acts in the movie. And we know that what is this effectively doing here in the United States? It's putting more. It's like dumping gasoline all over that fire that we see raging on social media every day. Where are the arrests? Where putting more pressure on Pam Bondi and the DOJ and Kash Patel and so it really is. It's setting up the next scenes. We don't know how they're going to play out and when they're going to play out, but certainly, we had Bill Gates suddenly decide that he was not going to participate in an AI conference. I believe it was over in India as the result of the fallout of this. And we know that the Clintons have their depositions coming up at the end of the month. There's the whole conversation about Hollywood that's just ongoing with all the Bad Bunny stuff and the Super Bowl and the entertainment industry. So, once the full weight of these horrors is actually unleashed to the public, that's when we're going to sort of hit that peak. And I believe that's going to be that tipping point when we've achieved that critical mass. But right now we're in the theater, to use that metaphor. Our eyes are wide open. We're witnessing the greatest show that's ever been scripted. And it's unstoppable. That's why I have so much confidence, and I know you do. Nothing can stop what's coming. And regardless of how the plan plays out, our trust remains immovable because we continue to see and receive confirmations on a daily basis that, as you know, I use that phrase, the overall trajectory of the operation is advancing exactly as it should. So, to your point, speculating about the UK, it's very, very possible. It seems to be shaping up that way, that they're hitting the barbed wire first, so to speak. And we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, and how long is it going to take? How long are they going to allow this anger to build inside of the U.S. before we actually see the optics of, what we want to see, of course, which are the perp walks, the arrests of, the big fish over here. We know it's coming, but like you said, and I just wanted to emphasize a point that you made, is that Epstein. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I've always thought of, Q mentions the keystone multiple times. I've always thought that Epstein was the keystone because he pretty much unlocks the doors to all of these different, basically he's like the thread. Once that thread gets pulled or that door gets unlocked, however you want to say it, it leads to deeper revelations about the exact nature of the cabal's control grid. So this guy was a puppet. Ultimately, I think you used the word a facilitator, which is brilliant. Yeah. He was a facilitator of a system that was constructed by the elites who control governments. And they use the intelligence agencies to do that. And Epstein essentially was their front man. So in essence, the intelligence agencies are the real power behind the government. And they're controlled and they're financed by the elites who operate outside of that government structure. So in my view, Andrew's arrest is going to bridge the gap for the public in terms of understanding how the world power structure actually works. It's a huge story because now, the facade of the elites being untouchable is gone. I mentioned that before. The exposure of their system of leverage and control, which is the real objective, is now being put into the public lexicon. And ultimately, people are going to learn that the royals were puppets too, to that same cabal hierarchy. The real targets who control the entire system, blackmail or control through blackmail, they're the names that most of the public is unaware of. But it was all, it's also come out, and we'll talk about the Les Wexner deposition as well. I mean, he mentioned, just like the files mentioned, that Epstein represented the Rothschilds. He worked for the Rothschilds. So they're advancing that narrative as well.
Exactly right, dude. Look, you said, how much further? And I always see this every time this stuff comes out. Even people in our movement, they vent. I'm sick and tired of nobody getting arrested. I understand that. You are. But is your neighbor, is your husband, is your coworker, are they screaming for military tribunals yet? The answer is no.
It's the burden of being ahead of the curve, man.
Yeah. Look, I don't mean to say this as an asshole, but if you don't like it, you can stop watching or you can go back to normie world. Like we don't make Patreon. I don't make the rules. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about the concept of international, not just the United States, international military tribunals that the world has not seen since World War II in Nuremberg. Think about what had to take place between 1938 and 1945, depending on what you believe about history, it doesn't matter, it was still bad, for the world to say, yep, let's watch military tribunals. Think about what World War II, and now look at where we are today and say, well, wait a second. It's the guy at the corner store, the guy that manages the restaurant you work at, are they going to be cheering for military tribunals today? Or are they going to be saying, what the F's going on? Where's the Constitution, right? That's just the reality of it is. And then you're also saying, then people will come and say, well, that's just show everybody and they'll demand it. No, you're balancing the possibility of potentially creating civil unrest, which is exactly what Q told you is not going to happen. So it's, we may think it's simple. It's not. It's not. When you're dealing with mass, you get a group over 20 people, over 100 people. It's very difficult to keep control of a group of 150 people inside a bar or 20,000 people inside an arena. If you've ever been in an arena, when things kind of get out of control, it can spiral very quickly. And now think about it on a mass scale, right? That's what you're dealing with. It's
a pretty simple dynamic, right? When you educate people, education leads to clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Confusion leads to chaos. It leads to violence. It leads to all types of things that you don't want. And that's why we keep coming back to this principle over and over and over, that this exposure operation that's been really, I think it's been ongoing for quite some time, but definitely ramped up quite unexpectedly, at least in my opinion, when Trump came back for his third term. I was not anticipating we were going to see such an intense disclosure operation play out optically while Trump was the sitting president. I thought we were just going to hit the ground running. I thought that the exposure operation had concluded with the ending of the fake Biden administration. And then we were just going to, we're just going to bust through the gates. It didn't play out that way. But the reality of the matter is that, again, the benefit of hindsight, you look back and you can realize now, and this is why it's so vitally important to never forget the context of your role in the movie as an anon. Right? It doesn't matter if you're a podcaster or not. If you're watching this show, you're an anon, you're awake. You're so far ahead of the general public. And the minute you lose sight of that context, it skews the way that you interpret everything that's going on with the operation, because you're putting it's almost like you're putting yourself, you're inserting yourself as the target audience of the movie, when in reality, we're the film critics, like Mike King says, and I think I've heard you say that as well. Like, we're the ones who sit back and analyze the movie, recognize that we're inside of one, but know that we're not the target audience. So you always have to keep that in mind and remember that the people have to be riled up so significantly. They have to see the justice process. And that's why we're seeing so much of this anger being directed at the DOJ. How they're going to unravel all that is a secondary question. But it makes perfect sense that all of this anger would be directed at Pam Bondi, at Kash Patel, et cetera, et cetera. If we're going to eventually get to military tribunals, that means that there has to be a fundamental systemic breakdown in the justice system that becomes so obvious to the general public that the people are going to be demanding some other entity. What other entity could possibly achieve those same ends but the military step in order to enact justice? So like I've always said, as much as I want to see it play out like yesterday, and as much as I wish I were wrong and that it would have already played out, we would have already seen the replays and so on and so forth, the reality of the matter is that this is the way that it has to be. You have to build toward that consensus, like you say all the time. Manufacturing, I mean, the chaos, the confusion, the anger, it breeds conversation, which then ultimately manifests in some sort of a consensus where the people are demanding, they're all on the same page, for the most part, recognizing that there is a massive problem that only one entity can actually address. If we're going to go down the road of military tribunals, the education process is absolutely key, because otherwise it would be interpreted as a military coup. That's the way that the general public would look at it. They would say, oh, Trump is a dictator. I mean, they would revive those old narratives that have been programmed into their head. He's not going to leave office. He's going to use the military to go after his enemies. It's the same reason why Q told us he had to appear to be neutral. So why, when Prince Andrew gets arrested, he's like, oh, that's a terrible thing, Or when you hear him saying, oh, I really like Bill Clinton. I'm really sad to see this play out this way. It's all being done strategically so that when we can build that consensus without, without having that added layer of the optics of Trump looking like he's using the military. Because in the minds of a lot of these normies out there, they still believe that Trump is going to use the military to take out his enemies and not leave office and blah, blah, blah. That's the only way to mitigate that. So, I think that's really what this all comes down to. It really is about educating the general public and somewhere in that process, achieving that consensus as we continue to see more and more incriminating evidence come out, as we continue to get gaslit by the DOJ. All this, there's nothing to see here. There's no smoke here. There's nothing to investigate. We're just going to close the book on this. The more people hear Trump saying, oh, it's time for the people to move on, we got more important things to talk about. They know exactly the psychology of the target audience and how that's affecting people. And they're doing it deliberately so that people will dig in even more. That's exact. And how many videos have you seen over the past several days of people basically just raging against, saying to Trump, I've seen so many TikTok videos of even people who support Trump saying, what the hell is this bullshit? You're telling us to move on. We're never moving on. And, people are just getting pissed. And then there's also the ontological shock that people are experiencing in the process as well, of having to adjust to this reality that this level of evil actually exists. So those two things are happening at the same time. And it's all, I guess the point, I'm being long-winded right now, as I often can be, but it's all being done strategically for a purpose. Yeah. And we just have to trust that it's playing out the way that it has to in order for us to get to the conclusion that we're all waiting for.
I've speculated before. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a situation in a couple of months where we see 1 million people descend on DC against Trump. Our people, we've had enough.
Right.
And my guess would be it would be not completely organic. Right. But imagine the television showing 50,000 people standing outside the White House saying, arrest somebody now. What would that do to advance everything you just talked about?
Exactly.
And not to be the dead horse, but I keep showing this drop. Imagine if we weren't here. While difficult, it's important to understand this must be done by the book. Average people must be able to digest and accept factually events. Well,
That's right.
if you're talking about international tribunals, now think about all the stuff we've been through this year, right? Doge corruption, election fraud, state fraud, organized protest, international espionage, human trafficking, defiance of federal law by elected officials, judicial corruption. I could keep going, right? You get the point.
What haven't we
Now,
seen?
right.
That's the question.
Now, if every one of those events, as they were taking place, if imagine, think about how one thing, right? Like, I just pick something, Nancy Pelosi and her fraud, right? Think about if that came out in March and all the other stuff I just said, and now Trump says, all right, we're arresting her. Okay, you just lost the news cycle for the next 6 months, right? If you're going to run her through traditional means, there's going to be depositions, there's going to be pretrial hearings, there's going to be motions, there's going to be evidentiary hearings, there's going to be every day that's going to be on the news, and all the other stuff that we've been through, no one would see it.
That's right.
And even if you did it quickly, right? Okay, we arrest Nancy Pelosi. Then a month later, we're going to arrest Waltz. And well, if the judicial system was just working swimmingly, would we ever get to a point where people said, let's do tribunals? No, because everything's working fine.
That's right.
Right? You're so that's what you should keep in mind I get it's frustrating, but I completely agree with Patriot. And I think realistically, this is just my speculation. I don't know. I'm not part of the Q team. I would argue this is going to intensify. I've been saying that for a number of months. We've been saying that, and it has intensified. And it's going to keep intensifying to whatever level it is where they can start and whatever shark they're going to have to jump to get to the point where perhaps we do end up in tribunals. But before we move on to Wexler, just one more clip. I love seeing Liz Crokin get her due. I remember when I had the opportunity to meet her a few times now, but I think it was at Club 47, actually about a year ago, last February, when General Flynn was there. And I said, I think you're going to be a busy person very soon. And it wasn't very soon, it was a year, but in the grand scheme, she is incredibly busy because after a decade of being ridiculed, mocked, bankrupt, attacked, her dog getting attacked for her work on Pizzagate, she is pretty busy right now because Pizzagate is getting validated. So I just want to play this clip. This actually dovetails perfectly off of what we were just talking about with Benny Johnson. Doesn't matter if you like Benny Johnson or not. He's got a big influence. Just listen to what she lays out here.
Who like to see happen here, and instead of like painting with broad brushes, like who would you really like to see focused upon? And after reading these Epstein files, what would be your biggest takeaway? How would you like to see, perhaps, if there is such a thing as justice in this world? There's going to be God's justice, obviously, and it's going to be horrifying for these people. But what would you like to see done on this mortal plane?
Yeah. Well, I will say there's been a positive development. There are several UN experts that are calling for global governments to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. They have come out with statements saying that this is not going away and this should not go away. And they also implied that, some of these people should be tried in international courts because, a lot like Jeffrey Epstein, for example, and a lot of his co-conspirators, they didn't just commit crimes in one country. They committed crimes in multiple countries. And I would argue that many of these people, maybe all of them, should go through military tribunals because there's so many of them. And again, these crimes are not just did not just cross state lines in the United States, being New York and New Mexico and Ohio, where Les Wexner lives, who's a co-conspirator, by the way, of Jeffrey Epstein. They were international. So I would like to see military tribunals. I would like to see Nuremberg 2.0 and none of them escape, and then come and work for the US government or something. I think they all need to have a fast trial through the military would be amazing. And then they should all get the death penalty. Because there's no place for people that rape, torture, and eat children in this world. Humanity cannot survive and thrive when those kinds of people are, number one, here and existing and roaming freely, but number two, when they're in positions of power. So I do think it's great that we have multiple countries appearing to pursue justice because this needs to be a global effort. I think it's great that even though the UN has sketchy ties itself and has been tied to child sex trafficking and also had Ghislaine Maxwell speak for them, but at least they're doing the right thing now.
Yeah, I wonder why.
What she's talking about is something Mike and I discussed last night. This little nugget that came out. If you think you're not watching a movie, as we're elevating the border of peace to a position where they're brokering the rebuilding and reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, only 2 weeks after Trump created it. How does that work? Anyway, you have the United Nations, as she just referenced. Epstein files suggest acts that may amount to crimes against humanity, say United Nations experts. Quote, so grave is the scale, nature, systematic character, and transnational reach. Let me say that again, transnational reach of these atrocities against women and girls that a number of them may reasonably meet the legal threshold of crimes against humanity. Hey, Patriot, that executive order 13818 that Donald Trump wrote on December 20th of 2017. What was it? Oh yeah, that was about crimes against humanity. That's right. You see how this is all like, and again, I don't know how much, it doesn't matter what's coordinated, what's not. Think about this first hour we've been on here, right? What's the theme of this? Yes, the children, absolutely. But to get to tribunals, look at what's happening now. You're bringing in an international, you're starting to see the rumblings of an international coalition.
Yep.
You're getting the UN, now you're starting to see, wait a second, how are we going to get to military? Like a few months ago, it didn't make sense. They brought the judge advocate generals into DC. That was signal, right? We have the sealed indictments. We keep saying to ourselves, how the hell are we going to get to military tribunals? Well, as we sit here right now on February 19th, we got a ways to go, but starting to make a little bit more sense, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it tied into your previous speculation about, well, maybe we'll see the UK, maybe we'll see Europe kind of take the lead here. But it does. It paints a very interesting picture now that we're starting to. It's the shock factor of the sex trafficking, the crimes against children, the pedophilia, is ultimately what's going to unite the world. Q is very unambiguous about that. But like I was saying before, Epstein, when you read through the files, a lot of them are just, him talking about virtually every cabal-oriented agenda that they've launched over the past couple of decades. He had a hand in that. And so this is an international, it would make a lot of sense that they're taking it that route to make the case that these are transnational criminals. I mean, we all know that that is true. And she's saying that she wants to see another, like a Nuremberg 2.0. And pretty interesting that there's a Nuremberg movie coming out. Pretty interesting that there's a Disclosure Day, and that's the title of Spielberg's movie coming out. So all of this stuff is happening.
Isn't that Disclosure movie on 6/16?
Or is it? I'm not sure.
There was a date on that. I'm sorry. Keep going anyway.
No, yeah, no. I was just saying it's very interesting how they're, in the same way that they conditioned all of us when the cabal was in control, they conditioned us for their next moves. Now you can see the white hats doing exactly the same thing in reverse. But in order to get to military tribunals, this is the type of case that needs to be made. It's not just a problem within the United States, as she's pointing out. She's absolutely correct. It wasn't just crossing state lines. We're talking about international criminal syndicate that's being gradually exposed. And I mean, I had the same reaction when I saw the post. I believe it was on my news feed. It was Brick's News saying that the UN panel is come out and said that the Epstein files suggests the existence of a global criminal enterprise. That's a direct quote, of committing crimes against humanity. And this is exactly what Liz Crokin is talking about. So it's pretty interesting how it's all going to play out. I still believe that there's going to be, I could be wrong about this, but I mentioned before a significant systemic breakdown. We're already seeing the beginning of it. That's what everybody's complaining about. Like, where is the Department of Justice? How can Todd Blanche get up there and tell us that there's nothing to investigate? The level of gaslighting is just, it's like a biblical proportion. So they're already kind of leaning in that direction of, to use Juan O'Savin's famous quote, like, you can't get to justice in the Justice Department. And I've always anticipated that in some way was going to be a part of this as well. It also ties directly into all the judicial tyranny that we've seen since the beginning of 2025 as well, when Trump came back in, trying to stonewall his agenda over and over and over, weaponizing the system against the people, against the will of the people. So I think that's an important element, but there's also this international one as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Well said, my friend. And just let me, one other thing. Think about why the UN. Well, we know the UN's a joke. We know it's an international criminal organization. Liz even mentioned they're involved in some of this stuff. But think about the other side of the aisle. Think about my good old friends in New York. Actually, think about the kids in places like New Jersey and Long Island, where they're still being brought to the United Nations on field trips, telling how great it. Well, using them to say, hey, by the way, we agree this is a problem. Well, that brings in the other side, right?
Exactly.
So there's a strategy behind everything.
There's a captured operation. We know that the UN's a captured operation. We talked about this the last time we were getting into the Board of Peace. Trump shows up at Davos, another one of their strongholds, and walks out with the charter for the Board of Peace and all that. But that's exactly what it's all about. It's getting it's wrangling in all these different members of the target audience who are going to give this a level of credibility that they otherwise wouldn't. If the United Nations puts its stamp of approval on it, the United Nations comes out. And I actually had somebody say, somebody commented on one of my posts saying basically, like, if a family member has a choice to believe you or the government or the media, then you don't stand a chance. And we've all lived that reality over and over and over. It's like, no matter how much they respect us, no matter how well educated they think we are, no matter how much they love us, and no matter how much they would trust us in any other circumstance, they're going to take the government's word, what they view to be an authoritative body, against your word 7 out of 7 days of the week. That's just the way that it goes. But that's the important thing, is to acknowledge that, as frustrating as that is, the good news is that the White Hats recognize that. And that's the whole reason that they're conducting the operation this way. That's why they're capturing the chess pieces, like Mike says, capturing the black pieces and painting them white, and using that as a strategy to engage people who otherwise would never take this information seriously. But when the UN starts coming out and starts talking about a global criminal enterprise, and you just watch and wait. All these international bodies are going to be calling for tribunals, and that's how they're going to get these people on board. The same thing. It's the same thing we've always said about the mainstream media, that there's no way, quite frankly, there's no way that you're going to engage and awaken the masses of the normies out there, the millions and millions of people who are brainwashed under psychological trauma-based MK Ultra style programming, to break free of that belief matrix without using that matrix itself as a weapon.
Yep. Well said, my
to
friend.
liberate people. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yep.
They can't be liberated by us alone. They have to have the illusion that, all of these sources that we trust are now saying the same thing as those crazy Q people. And that's how they're going to bring everybody together.
Yeah, and it's not just enough to activate the public through the military-civilian alliance. That's like one end of the football field. The other end of the football field is that simultaneously, if you want it to happen quickly, right? If you don't want this to take 50 years the way some traditional revolutions may take, soft revolutions, well, how could you do that? You not only engineer the great awakening of the public and this mass movement of digital soldiers and truthers and to come this way, you have to also simultaneously implode the other systems, implode the media, implode the government in a controlled manner. And eventually you meet in the middle. And that's it. You can see that happening. We've been able to see that happening at minimum since faux Biden came in office, 5 years ago.
You need a multi-pronged attack. You need a pincer, bare minimum. You need a pincer style attack. You can't approach this in the traditional sense of like just being offensive minded. Like we just have to go after the enemy and we have to bring them down and, wake up the public in the process, the way that so many of us anticipated that it was going to go early on in this journey. But we very quickly came to realize that a much more complex, and I would argue ingenious and necessary strategy had to take the place of whatever our expectations were, because it wouldn't have gone the way that we had anticipated. Like I said, if you educate people and you do it gradually, you give them enough space, enough real estate, as I call it, to be able to process things and to let things marinate and to have it appear as if they're organically shifting their positions on things, then you can arrive at a place of unity. But if you just, if you try to slam it down people's throat, you cause chaos, you cause confusion. And when people are in that type of a situation where they're confused and there's chaos and there's fear and there's anger, that's not a good recipe. That's not, then that's exactly what the white hats spared us from. So, again, it's like they say, be careful what you wish for, because if we had all gotten what we wanted when we wanted it, I think it probably would have been not unlike what Q said in, I can't remember, it was one of the early drops, when essentially saying that, if Trump had not been successful, if he had lost that election in 2016, they were prepared to do the unthinkable. And think about what the unthinkable would have looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly the scenario we're describing here, folks. I mean, it would have been, maybe not immediately, I don't think people would have marched out of their houses and immediately gone to war with each other, but by stages, that's ultimately the way that it would have devolved. It would have devolved into a very, very dangerous and untenable situation. And certainly there would be no great awakening. We would have had a war. And
decades of recovery.
And if we would probably never would have been able to heal from that.
Yeah.
And there's been studies about that. Mike King has done some great articles, talking about the history of previous civil wars, where even if you win, you don't really win, because you don't win the hearts and minds of the people. That's what this is all about.
Yep. Amen, my friend. Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any deeper, they couldn't throw more at us. Like I said, about 4 o'clock today, we got some information from Les Wexner, which just, look,
this is great.
Could you script it? Could you? I know we're tired. Everyone's tired to hear it, but could you script it any better than this? Let me, if Patriot, if you don't mind, I just want to take 90 seconds and just get to one sponsor here, since we're kind of a little bit past the midway mark here.
Yeah.
And then we're going to jump into Wexner, because that just adds on to the pile today of stuff. And by the way, stuff that's in the Q drops. This is all very relevant. So I want to thank our friends over at Beam Dream for their sponsorship. As you guys know, I've said this is actually a product that Rumble came to me last year with the sponsorship, but I was very happy to say yes, because this is a product I started using about 2 years ago through YouTube. It's basically like a hot chocolate you drink at night. It's all natural. It's made in the U.S., helps you sleep, filled with lots of good stuff. Product I've been using for a couple of years. My mom uses it. So our thanks to them. 90 seconds. We'll be back. We'll jump into Les Wexner. Getting good sleep can feel like a luxury. Between late nights scrolling headlines, prepping for shows, or falling down internet rabbit holes, I didn't even realize how often I was sacrificing sleep and how much it was costing me. For a long time, I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all, brain fog, low energy, already behind before the day even started. I'd rely on coffee just to function, crash in the afternoon, and then do it all over again. Trying to write, record, or think clearly while sleep deprived is brutal. At a certain point, I knew I needed to find something that actually worked. I started doing my own research and kept coming across Beam Dream. Between the ingredients, the science behind it, and the overwhelmingly positive reviews, I had to try it for myself. I've been using it consistently, and it's become part of my nightly routine. Whether it's been a long day or my mind just won't shut off, Dream actually helps me unwind. I fall asleep faster, stay asleep, and wake up feeling clear and steady, not foggy or irritable. What I love most is how clean and simple it is. No sugar, no weird chemicals, just science-backed ingredients like magnesium, L-theanine, and reishi that help your body shift gears naturally. It's one of those small habits that makes a noticeable difference, and it's something I'm intentionally carrying with me into the new year. If restless nights or unpredictable schedules have been holding you back, this is an easy place to start building better sleep habits. Beam is offering our audience up to 35% off for a limited time. Just click the link below and use code NewsTreason. That link is shopbeam.com/NewsTreason and use the code NewsTreason for up to 35% off, limited time only. Our thanks to Beam. So yeah, Patriot, finished up about a little before 5 with Joe's roundtable today, and I just went on to X and started looking around. The first thing I come up with is the House Oversight Committee, their official X account, dropping the full video of Les Wexner's deposition.
Yeah, it was like 5 hours, right? Or something like that.
Yeah. And obviously I didn't have any time to go through the whole thing yet. But of course, very instantly, all the clips start popping up. So I don't know, organic, not organic, who knows? But what's interesting is I'm like, oh, I know Wexner's in the boards. He's certainly connected. He funded Epstein. At least that's what we're told. Check out this for a coincidence. Today is February 19th, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to the February 20th deltas, tomorrow's 6-year delta, and what do you get? Epstein, Wexner. The story goes much deeper and darker. So literally, the House Oversight Committee drops Les Wexner's deposition video one day before the 6-year delta of where Les Wexner appears in the keyboards.
Q proof number, I don't know. What are we up to now?
17,717. I don't know. It's absurd at this point.
Yeah.
It's absurd. So I got a couple of clips here. We'll go through them, do some commentary, but this is big. And once again, Patriot, going back to what we keep discussing. This man, who is the head of Victoria's Secret, of all these major companies, right? Who's involved in, by the way, directly involved with this dude. Remember this dude? Mike Jeffries, the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, who got rung up for federal sex trafficking last December. Well, he was hired by Les Wexner in 1992. So yeah, founder of the founder and CEO of the Limited Brands, Wexner. So he was, and then we were told, he was. The official narrative is that this dude, this billionaire, who decided, 20 years ago, at least when he was in his 50s, a lot of life in front of him, he just decided to hand over all of his custodial account, as I understand it, of his finances to.
Yeah, he gave Epstein power of attorney over his entire.
Power of attorney. Thank you. That's the right term.
Mm-hmm.
He gave him his mansion on Park Avenue, or was it Park Avenue, I believe? A $70 million. What?
The Israeli government put a whole bunch of cameras in there too.
Right. So again, just ask yourself. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here with our audience, but I have to say it. He was in the boards. If he's upper middle management in this entire operation, somewhere between Wexner and between Maxwell, Epstein, and the intelligence agent. Do we think they're just getting to his deposition now?
Of course.
He's not in those sealed indictments. This is your proof right here that it comes out on this one of many. So let's start with let's start with this, and then we'll go through a few of these.
The committee is investigating the circumstances surrounding Mr. Epstein and Miss Maxwell and the trafficking of young women, trafficking and sexual abuse of young women or girls. Did Miss Maxwell ever introduce you to any young woman or girl?
No, I don't think she ever introduced me to any female or man.
Did Miss Maxwell ever ask you to introduce a young woman or girl to your friends or associates?
No.
Did you ever introduce any young woman or girl that you met through Miss Maxwell to any of your friends or associates?
Objection. Assumes in fact not in evidence.
Your client is still right to answer the question.
That's fine.
Repeat your question. I think the answer is no, but let's.
Did you ever introduce any woman or girl that you met through Miss Maxwell to any of your friends or associates?
No, never.
Now, look, man, I don't know what we're looking at here, but I think when you get to the other clips, maybe there'll be some room for speculation. These depositions are not done like this wasn't a live feed, right? This was done. I don't know exactly when this was done. It wasn't done today. It's done behind closed doors, in a room. Look, that could be him. It could be CGI. It could be a dude in a. I don't know what it is, but once again, I just pay attention to the narrative. Again, the net result is this was one of the first clips to come out within minutes after this 5-hour video is dropped. Everyone started saying, "Look at this." Look at this demon. He's sitting here laughing when he's asked about sex trafficking and everything else. As if again, this is the dude that was like above Epstein, right? So this is the guy that these entities picked that they were entrusted. Like, think about everything we did in the first hour of the show, right? This this worldwide influence, multinational influence campaign, right? This guy would be like James Bond or above level a bit, and he can't sit there and answer. Like, he seems sidelined, blindsided by some of these questions, which we'll get to in a minute. Your thoughts?
I would agree with you. Les Wexner was a big player. Certainly, I would put him above Epstein. This is the whole reason that he was chosen by whoever sits at the top of the pyramid. I think we're pretty confident that we have identified who those individuals are. And I imagine one of the clips you're going to play is going to talk about one of those individuals or one of those families that we've been discussing now for a very long time. But this was, I mean, first of all, the whole notion that this is playing out in real time, I think we've dispelled that a long time ago. This is supposedly February 19th of 2026. All of a sudden we get a closed door deposition of Les Wexner before the House Oversight Committee in the comfort of his own home. As we're getting all of these key escalations in this scripted movie that are, and this, what's significant about this, and this ties into what we were getting into a little bit earlier, or at least we touched upon, is pulling the financial element of this crime syndicate into the spotlight. Basically, this now introduces the public to, who's pulling the financial strings of this Epstein network, and it's now being put out into the open, and it's teeing up, I would argue, a corporate elite takedown at the end of all of this, because Epstein, again, he had his tentacles everywhere, all by design. But this is a very important thing. So Wexner, he's mentioned, I don't even remember how many times he was mentioned in the most recent Epstein file dump. It was like probably well over 1,000 times. This was an individual who gave over power of attorney, which we just talked about, to Epstein, funneled billions of dollars. And so here we are sitting back here, and we're supposed to believe that this guy just happened to, in the midst of all this stuff that's happening right now, spend 6 hours at his Ohio mansion claiming that he, trying to come off as naive and gullible, and saying that he was duped by Epstein. He called him a diabolical con man who stole vast sums of money. And he fully cut him off after 2008, like we've heard so many other people say. And then, of course, a couple days go by, and it's like, whoops, oh yeah, you didn't actually cut him off. Howard Lutnick. But anyway,
Right.
that's another conversation. But here he is. He's denying any of these social ties. He's denying any knowledge of crime, saying he's playing the classic "I was fooled" card sort of a thing. And you've got what's so interesting about this is that you've got, and this ties back into the overall grand design of this operation, is that the Democrats were the first ones to hit the barbed wire, to come out and to say he's not credible. The stuff that he's saying is bogus. And so you've got that, the optics of the Democrats continuing to push this whole thing. Forced cooperation under subpoena certainly signals that he is cornered, that he's basically, this is an individual who, in the context of the optics of the movie, is made to appear that way, like he's hiding something, he's cornered, he's perhaps even feeding controlled admissions to move, to advance the plot of the movie. But the timing of this thing, one day after Andrew's arrest, or it was literally like the same day that Andrew gets arrested, and it ropes together the finance to the royals, to human trafficking. And, a lot of people are saying, well, there hasn't been any charges yet. The same thing with Andrew, like they released him under his own recognizance, essentially, while he's still under investigation. It all goes back to the pacing element, right? So they use these kind of like denials to continue to red pill the public on how these elites, how these tycoons enable this whole honeypotting situation. And Les Wexner was the owner of Victoria's Secret, which is what we all know, that the whole story there behind the models, the trafficking network, etc., that that was used as a front for that, along with Abercrombie, which you just brought up. So, this is
right,
really
right in that drop right there, 3366. Les Wexner, founder of Victoria's Secret.
Victoria's
connected up.
Secret. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. There you go. And so this is huge. I mean, this exposes these rig networks, the billionaires who are, connected to this sex trafficking pedophile financier, et cetera. So again, it's priming this sort of mass demands to accelerate the process of justice. All it's going to do is just continue to get people to be demanding more arrests. And so, we're essentially watching the military's master plan unfold here, right on schedule. Again, we want to see it move a little bit faster sometimes, but when you really stop and appreciate the way that they're scripting all of this stuff out with Les Wexner, we're going to get to some other clips as well, revealing some pretty interesting truth gems in the process. You can all, I think, safely rest assured that we are watching a scripted movie.
Yep. To your point, Patriot, there's actually probably a clip I should have played right before this, but I'll back up to it right now, because going back to that clip we played with Fox News and Emily Campagna, right? The point I was making is not that just because that clip is there that instantly everyone sees it. The point I'm trying to make is that if you do this however many hours a day as we all do, you start to realize that we've been, Q tells you have more than you know. They tell you, remember, news unlocks the map. That's another Q drop, right? We're not just plucking this stuff out. We were directed where to look for these clues. And the point I try to remind people of is you can read the tea leaves. Not that we know what's going to happen, when's it's going to happen, how's it's going to happen, but you can often do a future proofs pass and say, look, this guy and this guy and this guy, a General Flynn, a Tucker Carlson, a Steve Bannon, a Catherine Herridge, they're all talking about this. Let me pay attention to this because I bet you this is going to pop up soon, right? So we spent the first hour plus of the show really outlining the importance of Epstein's network, this global cabal, this global influence network, going well beyond just Epstein Island and the United States and child sex trafficking. It's child sex trafficking. It's much bigger than that. And ultimately, if you want to get to a global coalition, you want to get to things like tribunals, you're going to have to establish that fact with the public at large. And now you can see it. Well, my long-winded point is Catherine Herridge, right? We were told in the drops, follow the pen, right? Catherine Herridge, for anybody that's new, was identified long ago in the Q drops, along with people like Sean Hannity, Sarah Carter, John Solomon, as people that we should pay attention to. And interestingly enough, all of a sudden, what was it, 2 years ago, Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox, and he was put out there to do, at one point, which is the largest live stream ever with like 300 million people with President Trump. He was freed. That's my theory. Who knows? Well, I also believe Catherine Herridge last year, when she was fired from CBS, was freed. So I pay attention when she puts stuff out there. And this is early last week, right? So before the second batch of Epstein files dropped on, was it last Friday, right? And what was she talking about last week? Let's take a listen to this. And now keep in mind how she was saying this last week and how it's playing out now. Let's go to this first.
There are emails with or about the Rothschilds, one of the most famous and richest families in the world. There are also audio recordings with a former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Barak. Epstein says to him, make a list of who owes you favors.
Who has IOUs to you? Is that who's out of the people in the past who you think you're close to? This person owes me a favor. This person owes me his life.
And there are pictures of politicians, in one case, a British politician in his underwear. Looking at these records, does it look like Jeffrey Epstein was engaged in an intelligence collection operation?
I think there's no doubt. I think the totality of circumstances, one, show that he was connected to people that are way above a normal individual that may be trafficking women or drugs. That's the first and foremost. Because he didn't just go after a famous person. He went after people, or he had connections to people that had connections to national security or huge technological advances. An intel operation would greatly benefit and be able to not only understand what other world leaders are doing, but be able to influence what they're doing.
A lot of these famous, influential people are still alive. How would you, as a federal investigator, probe whether there are crimes that can still be prosecuted?
In this case, when the United States is dealing with other nations on a global national security scale, I think that myself as an investigator, I would not be able to lead this investigation. I just would not be able to say that this is a crime, we need to go after this individual. It's so high, and these people, this is not a conspiracy. You look at the list of these people. There is no way that an investigator in the FBI or just an attorney in the DOJ could say, yes, a crime is here, let's go after him. This has huge political ramifications and global ramifications, and that is way above a typical criminal and way above the decisions that even a supervisor in the FBI would make.
So, Patriot,
that's great.
Yeah, think about this for a minute. In fact, I don't even think I got to play this on a podcast last week, and I apologize to the audience. I must have forgotten about it. I definitely posted it. And I said, wait a second. Now, keep in mind, this was early last week. Everyone's sitting there going, and not that Pizzagate's not important. Everyone's getting shocked. The Normies getting shocked by Pizzagate. But even people in our community were like, oh, look at this. They're talking about this. They're LeBron James. And Harridge is here going, don't worry about any of that stuff. Look at this. The Rothschilds. International syndicate. It's so big. That guy is basically saying it's above a government. It's beyond the scope of the DOJ and the FBI to handle. Well, what's left? Military? International.
Right.
And now, a week later, what narrative is playing out? A week after Harris put that out there, exactly what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm. And the UN basically saying that exact thing. I mean, so now we're getting to the questions of, now that you have the public engaged and knowing about Epstein and knowing what he was up to and all of the satanic ritual abuse and the shocking emails, the details that are coming out, the public's digesting all that. But then the next natural question is, because again, nobody really even knew. You go back to the beginning of this operation, back to 2016, 2017, 9 out of 10 people had no clue who Jeffrey Epstein even was. And it wasn't until he was arrested and supposedly killed himself that he became sort of a household name. But even after that, we got into the as you call them, the faux Biden years, and everyone just kind of forgot. Nobody was really paying attention to Epstein. But now he's back in the spotlight. The public is being red-pilled about these horrific crimes against humanity. But it then begs the question, who is this guy? You know, like once you get past the shock factor of it all, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Who financed him? Where did he get all of his money? How did he rise to such a prolific position where he's talking to all of these world leaders? I mean, and they're all coming to him for advice on everything from financial advice to dating advice to advice on how to, you know, I hate to say it, but advice on how to rape kids or, you know, whatever. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Where did he get his money? And then as far as, and this is what Catherine Herridge was just talking about, and this other gentleman, I missed his name, who has jurisdiction to go after this guy? Right? That's the big question there. It's bigger than, I mean, these individuals, we all know what the punchline is here, folks. We know, I mean, Q told us, he laid it all out. Mossad is above CIA. Okay. We know what the general hierarchy is, that this is a Mossad-led blackmail operation that was being run by the Zionist government in Israel that is ultimately controlled by the Rothschilds and other entities as well. But I mean, ultimately, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a transnational criminal international syndicate. How do you actually go after them? How do you bring them down? And as this guy was talking about, it's not a simple, and it actually makes a lot of sense as to why we're seeing the DOJ, we're seeing Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and to a degree Kash Patel and Dan Bongino when he was in there saying all of these things that are riling up the public. this guy's basically saying that this is bigger than just like a prosecutor at the DOJ or even somebody like the attorney general to decide to bring charges, because it is much broader in scope than most people even understand. So I think that's also, it ties directly into the conversation about military tribunals and a Nuremberg type of a situation having to play out. This is all part of that process of, again, going back to that same principle of educating the public on what it is that we're really dealing with here. We're not just dealing with a guy who happened to be a very wealthy individual who lured people to his island to have sex with underage girls or even kids. I mean, as horrific as that is, that really is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, again, I want to be very clear here, and I've always said this, that I do believe, as Q told us, that crimes against children is going to be the uniting factor. But that doesn't suggest that there's not a whole level of other information to build on top of that foundation in terms of getting the public to understand how this operation really worked, who was really pulling the strings, who was actually financing Epstein. Okay, because like we talked about earlier in the show, Epstein was never the primary target, nor was Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, she's far more important in the puzzle than Epstein, and I would say probably Les Wexner. I would put in that category as well, but it goes to an entirely different level, to the top tier of this satanic cabal. And once you get there, once you arrive at those types of conclusions, the practical questions then become, how do you actually take down an organization, if you want to call it that, that operates independently of law, that operates independent of boundaries, of governments, of everything. Everything that we know of as the structure of the way that our world works, these individuals are outside of that structure. They control that structure. So then how do you go about actually bringing them down? What entity does that?
Right.
It's not the governments that they own. It's not the politicians that they own. Think logically. We were told.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah. And to your point, I would argue that we're all learning too, right? Sure. Look, let's go to this drop right here. By the way, the other thing she wove into that was a conversation with the former prime minister of Israel. No coincidence that was thrown into that clip too, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Drop 4747. Embeds drop 3837, which said bigger than you can imagine. More than the selling of state secrets, more than the selling of U.S. security, more than the selling of military tech, more than the selling of CIA assets, NSA bulk collection, uranium, et cetera, et cetera. Crimes against humanity. When you cannot destroy or defeat the United States of America from attacking head on, you change tactics and deploy a kill from within operation. Financial economy, military police, division of citizens, border collapse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And Q reposted this and said, bigger than you can imagine. Now, some people might say, well, wait, selling of state secrets and U.S. security and military tech. No, Obama did that. Well, what do you think? He did that without being blackmailed? You think anybody in the military did that without being blackmailed?
You think Obama ever did anything that he wasn't told to do?
Right. All these other things, financial, economy. You think JP Morgan did this without being blackmailed? Right? It all comes back to that largely. And Q is telling you bigger than you can imagine. Yeah. And again, I will just speak for myself, right? Raise your hand if, as you watch this play out, even though we think we know everything, this is bigger than you can imagine. Yeah.
Yep.
Every day.
No doubt about it.
Right.
Yep.
I go back to the Patriot. I go back to the Epstein list that wasn't the Epstein list, right? Remember, folks, careful with the drops. There's a lot of things. That list everyone circulates on Telegram says this is the Epstein list. It was in the Q drops. No, there's a list in the Q drops with nothing else on it. It's a blank.
It was
drop.
posted by an anon, not by Q, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Q put it either way. Q did repost it, but again, it doesn't say this is the Epstein list. It's just a list of names, and everybody took that. Mm-hmm. Either way, if even just a year ago, if somebody said, you know, who do you want to see arrested? Who do you want to see prosecuted, taken down, tribunal, whatever you like, as a result of the Epstein Island and its associated operation, you would say, well, Epstein, of course, Maxwell. Then you'd say, oh, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Gates. You'd be naming all of the lowest level players in the whole thing. Who had Mendelsohn on their bingo card?
Right.
Who had
Exactly.
Mendelsohn? Who had somebody close to the Prime Minister of the UK selling state secrets, right? Andrew, you kind of knew, but we're just scratching the surface. In other words, we were all just, but well, get the actors, get this. They're eating. Of course, that's terrible.
Yep.
But Q told you it's bigger than you can imagine, and now you're starting to see. And I don't think we even have a clue. Us anons, at least I'll speak to myself. I don't think I have a clue as just how far this goes. I mean, what have we seen so far? You mentioned a couple of. Would you mention Finland? What was the country you said?
I believe Norway, if I'm not mistaken.
Norway might have been one. I think I saw somebody Latvian. We've seen the UK,
France, I believe.
France, Israel, United States. Canada's in there. We haven't heard anything. Like, we haven't scratched the surface. You start getting in international finance, you're going to bring in places like Hong Kong and Singapore and all.
Yeah.
Who knows? So it kind of goes back to what we started with in the show, Patriot. I know we're kind of getting sidetracked here, but just do it already. Just arrest people. Do what? We don't even know what needs to be done because as Q told you, it's bigger than you can imagine.
It's bigger than we can imagine as anons, and we're
Yeah.
still piecing together the puzzle, having already established that we're way, way ahead of the masses of the target audience of the movie. I think your point is well taken. I mean, there's going to be a lot that's revealed here about the grand scope of how far this satanic network and how deep it goes, and the key players as well. I mean, there's been a lot of talk. I mean, we all know about the Rothschilds, and certainly when I get to that, I'm sure with the Wexner clip, Liz Crokin brought it up, or somebody brought up that email that talked about him being a Mossad agent, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other individuals as well. I mean, there may even be families, individuals' names that we haven't even heard yet. I'm not putting that out there as something impossible. I mean, we're pretty well informed, yes, but do we have necessarily the grand picture of all of these people and what that hierarchy actually looked like? I mean, people have been talking about it and speculating about it. You've heard a lot of discussion about the black nobility families, the 13 bloodline families. I mean, but again, and I'm not suggesting there's not a lot of truth behind that. I've talked about these things, but that in and of itself doesn't prove that we already know. I mean, we have a general idea of what the climax of the movie and what the justice phase and all those things might look like. But in terms of the actual hierarchy and the way that it all works, the skeletal framework of the cabal and who all of the players were and what their responsibilities and roles were, we're still being educated on that. That's an ongoing process. Because only so much was revealed in the drops,
Yep.
And the rest of it was a lot of information, and I would probably argue disinformation that was put out there for us to speculate about. But this is we're dealing. I mean, the people that, to your point, if we had gotten what we wanted when we wanted it, we would have at best only seen justice play out with the mid-level management type of individuals, but we never would have gotten to the very top of the pyramid, which I believe was actually the first the first tier that was removed behind the scenes very, very, very early on.
I would agree.
And it's interesting. I mean, I remember I was having a conversation with Louis Herms about this, and he was saying that the way that because he agreed with me that it was really it was the very top of that satanic pyramid that was taken out extrajudicially, you might say, at the very beginning of the operation. But the public facing narrative is that they're doing exactly the opposite, right? That they're going from
exactly right.
So it's interesting to see how they're playing that, but eventually we're going to get all those answers.
That's a really great point. Really great point. So yeah, we got a little sidetracked, but all important stuff. So just going back, that was Catherine Herridge, as I said last week. Like I said, as everyone was kind of arguing over other things, she was sitting there going, hey, wait, Israel, Rothschilds, international syndicate, look over here, look over here.
Right.
And that was a week ago. And now we can listen to Les Wexner today. And to your point, he's middle upper management. This didn't, they didn't just sit this guy down today. So
you first met Epstein. How did he originally present himself to you? What services did he say he was offering?
Well, when I first met him, it was just hello, and He didn't represent anything, and I didn't ask anything. I was just meeting a friend's acquaintance.
As that business relationship became closer and you eventually hired him, I assume he pitched his services in some way. What was his way of framing what he was offering to you?
I think it was his experience at an industrial level, like working for a big company like Bear Stearns, and then he had done personal work for the Rothschild family in France.
Personal wealth management, essentially?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Rothschilds, huh?
Weird how that name keeps coming up, right?
Funny how that works. I'm wondering if, let's see, maybe like next week or next month, we're going to start hearing Fox News talk about the Rothschilds. Let's see.
Yeah, well, you follow Fox News on a daily basis. Have you heard them mention the Rothschilds at all?
Not very intermittently, no.
Because I've never heard that name, actually. I mean, that's going to be a big bellwether when we start hearing the talking heads on Fox News mentioning the Rothschilds. That's big.
Yeah.
That'll be big.
And I think the reason I jokingly make that prediction is because how many times have we seen this, Patriot? Something's in the drops, then it moves from the drops to Q's favorite influencers, whether it be General Flynn or Tucker Carlson or it lives in X world and podcast world for a while, and then something like this, like a big name,
gets
some
dropped.
kind of event, drops it, and then the next thing you know, it's going to move to Fox, and that's. Look at Soros, right? Remember the clips from 2018, 2017 when they would cut you off on Fox News? Soros is a household name practically at this point, right? So you see how we take the deep state, right? The deep state's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It was 5-6 years ago. So you see how they take these concepts and they move them from, along the conveyor belt, so to speak. And I think, keep your eyes out, folks. And one of the things I'm doing, at least, I'm going to keep my eyes out over the next coming weeks and months for the advancement of the name Rothschild, because not only does it obviously play into this in terms of the financial arm of this global crime and influence circle, but what else might it connect to that we're keeping an eye on this year? Oh, yeah, the central banks and the Federal Reserve, right?
Yeah, and I would also add another layer to that, which is all of the optics of the ADL-driven censorship about anti-Semitism. I mean, that's going to happen. Those things are going to tie together. The minute they start talking about the Rothschilds on mainstream media, you're going to hear this huge uproar of this is anti-Semitic, and you're going to see how the whole thing comes together. Why was the ADL created? Back in 1913, right alongside the Federal Reserve that you just mentioned, the whole the financial system. So it certainly seems as if all of those things are going to, at a certain point, we don't know when and how, but all of those things are going to make their way onto the front burner. But I mean, the reality is that we were told that Israel is being saved for last. We always basically knew the reason behind that, right? But when you start hearing in connection to Epstein, which is the biggest story of our generation, really, that you start hearing that the Rothschild name in direct connection through an individual like Les Wexner, after having seen it in all of the emails that came out of that huge file dump. I mean, that's I don't even know. I don't even know if I have words to describe how big that actually is. That means that we're actually exposing the top levels of this cabal. I mean, that's really ultimately where we're headed right now, and we're getting closer. Like you just said, I mean, that's really the way it works. Is like that's why we say we are the news now, because we're talking about we're months and months away ahead of the mainstream media, and it's all by design. It's by the military. They drip out the information. Anons pick up on it. It circulates in our world, and then some of the bigger podcasters / influencers like Tucker, somebody who really has the ability to amplify that information, but still not mainstream. And then one day, boom, lo and behold, it takes root in mainstream, and then it gets into the consciousness of the normies. So this is huge. This is absolutely huge.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'll give you another example. In fact, we're probably not going to have time to get to it tonight because in order of importance, it's not that high. But just let me interject one thing very quickly. None of us are prophets. None of us have any intel sources. I don't consider myself to be any kind of genius or anything, right?
You're pretty smart dude, though.
I appreciate that. Pattern recognition, though, right? Joe Rambo and I did a show last Saturday, and when everyone was buried in the Epstein files, I was just watching the usual suspects. I started seeing, in fact, I have a, let me see if I have it right here. Well, anyway, I'll talk to it. I posted on Friday night, I had like 18 different screenshots of all these same people talking about the call to prayer in Brooklyn and New York City being blasted out, right? You saw that.
Yeah, I did.
Now, the funny thing is everyone's going, oh my God, look at this. We're turning into a Muslim city. The only problem is they're forgetting the minor detail that was a law that Eric Adams passed 3 years ago. It's not anything new.
Mm-hmm.
So when you suddenly see all these people talking about it, I go, we're about to hear about Mamdani again. Now, if you guys have had your televisions on the last 24 hours, you've been inundated with Mamdani news everywhere. The taxes, right? I'm not that smart. We've just seen that playbook a million times, and we just showed it to you again with Heritage, right? You look over here, you look to see where there's a little bit of smoke. That little bit of smoke turns into coals, and eventually it turns into a flame, and it usually starts in the same places, right? That's the pattern. So anyhow, that's just another example. Like I said, we'll probably talk about.
That's the real media cycle. That's really what it comes down to. Is as long as the white hats, the military has been in control of the illusion making machine, of the mainstream media and of social media. Let's not forget, we always quote that drop. We are the gatekeepers of all, and by all we mean all information. So when that started, an entirely new media cycle began right along with it, which is basically what I just described and what you said.
That's an absolutely great point. Absolutely great point. That's why we highlight people like that. I think we talked about last time, January 29th, when General Flynn out of the blue starts talking about silver manipulation.
Yeah, right.
The next day, the price of silver crashes. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, let's go to this last one on Wexner. Nothing earth shattering here, but again, just very, very important narrative seeding, and again, scripted.
Is this the one with his attorney?
Yeah.
Okay.
An interesting 2-minute interaction between him and his attorney. You got to kind of listen closely. I believe there's a couple of subtitles. So here we go.
Your chief of staff, for the record, who is that?
His name is Bruce Saul, and I met him through an acquaintance.
Answer the question.
Okay.
It's going to help if you answer the question that he asks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We'll all get out of here a lot faster.
But as I look back at it, it was part of the con. So I never met Meyerwald.
Can I have 1 second? Because I think it will move this thing along a little faster. Tell him. Stop. Okay? Just answer the question.
Okay. I think I'm giving a long answer, but to understand in context, because if I just say yes or no, you won't understand it. And I really want this whole group to understand it. And I never would have guessed I was being conned. Never, ever. The deceit was so subtle. Yes, I know.
Answer the question.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure we all appreciate the stories. We're just trying to answer the questions they actually want to be answered.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I hope it is. That's kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Answer the question.
Okay.
A discrete question on a different topic. We know that at one point you owned a property in Palm Beach. It was a large oceanfront estate. We understand that you sold that estate to a guy named Abe Gossman, and that later Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein got into a bidding war over that property. Do you have any knowledge of, or did you have any involvement in that dispute between Mr. Epstein and Mr. Trump?
No.
Let me just point out a couple of things
Love
here.
it.
Number one, it's awfully good lighting in there.
Yeah.
Awfully good lighting in there. Like, you see the reflections on them. I mean, it looks like stage lighting. I don't know, but forget that
Yep.
for a minute. Let me just kind of point out what I think is obvious. I've been involved ownership-wise and other with a few small businesses over the last 25 years. It's pretty difficult to be in any kind of small business without ending up in lawsuits. I've been in that chair a few times. This just goes with the territory. I know not to do what he just did. I'm not running a worldwide crime syndicate, right? Even if he's not running a worldwide crime syndicate, he was the founder and CEO of a multi-billion-dollar public company. Do you realize how many times that dude's had to be in front of a place where you can't answer questions and you can't tell business secrets that might move your stock down or up, or you're in a debt? I mean, there is no way in hell that dude got into that chair and did that.
I agree.
Unless he's just gone completely sick. So I just have to point that out. I mean, you don't get into the positions that these people are in, quite frankly, without being good at keeping your poker face.
Yep.
You don't get to. You're not going to get to the top of running a regional division of Home Depot without being pretty good, let alone to where he was with limited brands and all of that over the years, on top of what we know has gone on behind the scenes. So I know I'm kind of beating this to death, but I hope people can really stop and look at it, because look, this stuff all looks, and if you, maybe it is, it's meant to look believable. It's, that's the game of these psyops. We don't know what's real, what's not. I'm not here to necessarily tell anybody, but that Patriots just that jumps out at me. I find it very difficult to believe that there's anything real about that.
Watching a scripted movie. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I didn't really think about that in terms of the lighting, but you're absolutely right. It looks like it was professionally done, about as high definition as you can imagine for production quality. But more substantively, you're absolutely right. This is an individual who, okay, you could say plausible deniability. The guy's in his 80s. Maybe he's a little bit, maybe he's losing it a little bit. Okay. But I think what you just said, I mean, this is, first of all, you have to appreciate the stakes here. He's not just being deposed about, some, I don't know, some financial dispute or something that he's facing litigation over. He's being deposed about Jeffrey Epstein, child sex trafficking, satanic ritual abuse. I mean, these are all related elements to this deposition. So that's, first and foremost, you would think that, even a guy of his advanced age would have had the experience, like you said. I mean, you've had experience sitting in that chair. You know what to say. I mean, certainly you listen to your lawyers and you provide the very baseline, the most limited amount of information as you possibly can to answer their question. And then you allow them to ask follow-up questions to try to elaborate and give more detail. You don't fill in the blanks for them. He literally said in that clip, well, I want to give you context so that you can understand all of these things. And his lawyer's sitting there going, man, I'm going to, and I mean, that's the other thing. What lawyer leans over to Leslie Wexner, this multi-billionaire, and says, I'm going to fucking kill you. Like that just does not happen. I've seen people even speculating as well. Is this his lawyer? Is this his handler? I mean, what's going on here? Is that meant to be the way that it's, coming across? Because I mean, the lawyer clearly, it almost seems as if he's trying to be jovial and have a good sense of humor about it, while at the same time trying to get this guy to stop rambling on and just answer their questions in the interest of time. But it goes to an even deeper level, which is like, I mean, you don't lean in on a clearly hot mic where, all this stuff is being recorded. They're going to be able to hear exactly what you're saying. And he leans in and says, I'm going to effing kill you. I mean, come on.
And isn't it convenient? You're right. I didn't even think about that. Isn't it convenient to the narrative space that some people who clearly know who this dude is looking at it saying, well, maybe that's one of his Israeli handlers. Isn't that
Exactly.
convenient, right? Yeah.
It certainly looks like it could be, right? I mean, we've been waiting to hear, I know it's somewhat unrelated, but we were talking about former Prince Andrew earlier. My understanding is he was very close with none other than Rachel Chandler, that name that was dropped by Marjorie Taylor Greene. We keep waiting to see that pop up in the news. But yeah, this guy, very possibly, I mean, again, this is all scripted, but you have to think about the optics, the target audience, and who's going to pick up on these things. Are the normies going to pick up on that and think, well, is this guy his handler or whatever? Probably not. That's that's probably a wink and a nod to all of us, just to say, I mean, we know you guys are going to be talking about it, dissecting these clips, and there's no way that that his lawyer would lean in and say something like that and repeatedly express his frustration with him. But even more to the point, I don't think that there's any possible way that Les Wexner, the real Les Wexner, would sit there and pontificate and go into all of these elaborate backstories and everything else, knowing full well that anything he says can and will be used against him.
Yep.
It just doesn't,
right.
logically, it doesn't add up. So.
Yep. So yeah, I would say keep your eyes in the news cycle for the Rothschilds. Let's see what happens here. But I think this,
only a matter of time, bro.
Yeah, this global conspiracy situation, that's the real, again, I don't mean, I get beaten up every time I say this. I don't mean to take away from the children by any means. But as far as if you want it taken down, you got to show people what's really happening. And that's what seems to be really, really starting to advance with these two stories today in a big way. Mike always talks about first downs. I think we just made 3 first downs today.
So yeah, big time.
Keep your eyes on that for sure. We're getting a little long here, but I want, if in maybe 10 minutes or so, if we could squeeze in one more thing, because I think it's important. Mike King showed me something last night, which again, I think is really important right now. Look, given the Saving Israel for Last, given their deep state connection to this influence network, to places like the UN, all that, you're starting to see. So when you see the UN starting to cross-pollinate with Epstein and everything else, merging in narratives, it's worth noting. And, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Patriot, it was only just a number of weeks ago that Trump unveiled the Board of Peace in Davos. And now here we sit today, as all these other things are happening, there's Trump holding the first meeting of the Board of Peace and talking about reconstruction and redevelopment in Gaza. It's like as if they just did that and amazing, right? Let me just play the normie narrative here, and I just want to show you something that I think is an interesting thing that Mike dug out last night that's definitely been overlooked with all the other stuff going on. Let's take a listen to this.
We've come under President Trump's leadership. The fact that we've already seen aid entering Gaza without it being looted by Hamas. The fact that we've seen the hostages be released. The fact that we have an unprecedented global coalition, as evidenced by this meeting today, truly unprecedented. That was only possible because of the leadership of President Trump. We've made tremendous progress, as was outlined in the meeting. There is still a lot of work to do, but we have tremendous momentum in terms of implementing the president's peace plan. This was another step in that direction.
So you mentioned the board, still has a lot of work to do. What do you see as the next couple of priorities in terms of action in Gaza?
Well, look, the ultimate goals here are security and prosperity. Those two things go hand in hand. That's also part of the demilitarization of Hamas, which the president has been clear needs to happen. So the board is working on this. We're seeing the money that was contributed, the money that was pledged today. We also see the different forces, the personnel that were also pledged during this Board of Peace meeting. Really tremendous progress. Security, prosperity, peace. That's what the president wants to see. This is so much evidence, once again, that President Trump truly is the peace president.
So the president talked this morning also about Iran. Here.
I'm going to stop there because I actually don't even want to get into the absolute clown show that is our entire war games with all of our ships being played out on
the armada that he's sending.
Yeah, It looks like we're about to go in tomorrow. Jim, what do you think? Oh, well, let's look at this. Let's put a drone over the Abraham Lincoln. Just show everybody. That whole thing. I don't even want to touch on that
There's
right
so
now.
much. Oh my God, there's so much misinformation going on around that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So the thing I discussed with Mike last night, I Patriot, my apologies. I didn't get to see your show with him on Monday. I've been a little behind. So you may or may
I
not
missed your show last night on Wednesday. So
Yeah.
we're even. Yeah.
Did you guys discuss any of the kind of the takedown of the Greater Israel Project? Did he mention that at all?
I don't believe we got into that on Monday, but it's certainly been a recurring theme that we've been discussing.
Recurring theme. And so obviously I don't think that we need to educate everybody of what the idea was with the destabilization of the Middle East, right? We played the clip of Wesley Clark in 2001 talking about he found that memo where we were going to go into 7 countries over the next, Syria, Lebanon, right? The whole idea of let's demonize let's do false flags, let's do 9/11, let's scare everybody that the Muslims want to kill us, let's push everybody away from Israel. Like they were trying to take over that area. No shock, right? So it's safe to say that I'll just focus on the Israeli cabal government for now. The Zionists are no friends of Muslim nations, right? Pretty safe to say. So this is pretty major signal, in my opinion, when you look at, now again, they're focusing on the board of peace and Gaza and Hamas and the ending of the war, which I think we're all in agreement on what's probably actually happening there. This is the kind of signal to me tells me that our theory of we're not being told the whole truth about what's going on in Israel and have not been since 10/7 of 23 it was. This to me feeds right into it. Look at this headline. Indonesia says 8,000 troops are ready for possible peacekeeping mission in Gaza by June. Now, why is that almost unbelievable to me? Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world, 240 million. Okay. Indonesia does not have diplomatic relations with Israel and does not formally recognize Israel as a state. Wait, what? This is the troops that are going into Gaza. Indonesia had said it'd be willing to recognize Israel if and when Israel formally recognizes an independent Palestinian state under a 2-state solution,
which is exactly where this is going.
So, Politico, I'm trying to think of the date on this. Let me blow it up for 1 sec, see if I can read it. So this story came out over the weekend. Mike King obviously saw it in the Times, right? That's where he focuses his content. So the paper of record and many, many others around the world now 5 days ago, reported that they're getting ready to put 8,000 troops from the largest Muslim country in the world that doesn't recognize Israel as a state, and they're going to go into Gaza as a peacekeeping. By the way, I forgot the best part. At the behest of Donald Trump and the Board of Peace. That's what the article says.
Oh, well, there you go.
So Trump and his new illegitimate Board of Peace are sending 8,000 Muslim troops into Gaza. Where's the backlash, Patriot?
Well, you would think that Israel would be pretty upset about that, right?
Right. Right.
Yep.
And
not to mention the fact that we're being told that the conflict is still basically raging on, right? There's lulls in it, but there's always some news story coming out of Gaza. But it seems as if they've kind of taken that that off the front burner, so to speak. But even after the whole peace deal, there were a number of incidents after that supposedly that occurred. But we've long speculated, and I know Mike King has been really the tip of the spear on this, that the whole situation on 10/7 was a fake false flag. It was completely artificially engineered. The whole premise of it is absolutely ludicrous. The fact that, and we've talked about this so many times, I feel
parachutes.
Yeah, the hand gliders, the parachutes. And meanwhile, we're talking about the the most technologically fortified advanced border in the world that can detect a grain of rice going past. I mean, we're being told that on the one hand, but on the other hand, we're being told that they got caught with their pants down by Hamas with these handmade, parachutes. And I mean, the whole narrative is absolutely ridiculous. But so here we are, fast forward a few years, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to believe that Israel is going to be okay with 8,000 troops from Indonesia, from a state that doesn't even recognize its own legitimate right to exist, if you want to put it that way, and has also added that contingency upon it, basically saying that if you recognize Palestine and we have a two-state solution, which I've long believed was going to be the end result here. I don't think Israel's being saved for last, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be wiped off the face of the earth. Like, some of the rhetoric we've heard, I don't believe that for a second. We're going to expose the Zionist government. And of course, this ties into our large conversation we had tonight about Epstein and the powers that be above him and so forth, the Rothschilds, etc., that essentially, set up the state of Israel with the Balfour Declaration, as we know. There's going to be the exposure of all that evil. And I would argue probably the removal of this Zionist type regime, this ideology, this toxic ideology that's really hated all over the world. And there's going to be a reset, so to speak, in the Middle East, where you have a two-state solution where both states are recognized as having the right to exist, etc. I could be wrong about that, but it seems to me like the story that clip and the headline that you just showed is perfectly aligned with that. You got a country that says we don't recognize you unless you recognize Palestine as an independent entity and an independent state, and at that point we will recognize you. So very interesting that they decided to go with Indonesia as far as the script writers.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. You should have seen my face when Mike showed me that list, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding. But
yeah, that's how it goes. I mean,
enjoy the show, everybody. Enjoy the show. Yep. Well, this has been, dude. This time flies when we get together. I had like 8 more things I could have gone to, but I thought
we didn't even get into the Mamdani situation.
I know. That's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. So plenty more to go with that one, guys. Before we start getting to thank yous, I know everybody starts dropping off when we do that. Thank you guys all so much for being here wherever you're watching tonight on whatever platform. If you could, wherever you're watching, best way you can help out Patriot and myself is, of course, hit that positive affirmation button. That is the heart button on X, the thumbs up on Rumble, the red pill over on Pilled. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you guys for that. Let me come over here. Let me just, Patriot, if I could just run through Pilled over for a minute and just thank some folks over here. Belushi, if you guys are watching on Pilled and Rumble, I'm going to raid you guys over to his channel tonight. You guys probably saw him with us today on the roundtable. Belushi gifted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cookies. Thank you, my friend. Trisha E gifted a cookie. I am Beanpole gifted. Yeah, cookies like it's a little like a.
This is on Pilled.
Yeah, this is Pilled.net.
I'm not too familiar with it then. Okay.
Yeah, Pilled is cool. It's a cool platform. It's their gifting situation is a lot cleaner than other platforms. You just hit a button. It's small amounts. They're not like big dollar amounts, but it allows everybody to kind of share everything. It's cool what they do over there. I am Beanpole gifted a cookie and said blessings. Thank you. Sean Joe gifted a cookie. Thank you. And Good Dog 45 gifted a can. Thank you guys very much for that. Patriot, do you have anybody over here you want to thank?
I'll just say thank you.
I know your thing is touchy over there sometimes.
Yeah, I've been popping back and forth to my Rumble channel just to see if I saw any rants pop up, I should say, and I was going to screenshot them, but I didn't catch any tonight. So I'll just say kind of a overall thank you to everybody for tuning in. I know that the lion's share of the audience we had is certainly on your channel, but we had I would say overall probably close to 6,000, maybe more people tuning in tonight. So I really do appreciate that. And again, if you're, like Dave said, make sure you hit that positive affirmation button. And if you're not following my channel or vice versa, if you're following me and not Dave, make sure you rectify that situation. follow us both. But no, I didn't see any rants tonight. I just want to say a general thank you to everybody for tuning in, and thank you guys for your support. And certainly contact Matt Geiger. I'm going to have him on over the weekend. Now's a great time to get into precious metals. Buy that dip, folks. We'll talk more about that in a couple of days. I know you work with Matt too.
Yeah, great guy. And I couldn't agree more. We all know where that we all know we've seen where it can go. I'll just leave it at that. Do your own research, but I'm in agreement with Patriot on that. And yeah, as far as over here, guys, I have Patriot's link up on the screen. It's also in my description. It's good to give everybody a follow if you like their channel. It helps quite a bit with the algorithm and everything. So if you're trying to get to Patriot Underground, it's on the screen right there, rumble.com/C/Patriot Underground. If you're trying to get to me, it's just newstreason.com. That'll take you to the link tree. And guys, we appreciate that. Just a couple over here. This is one of the longest Rumble names I've ever seen. Durango NIBXRYU. I think I got that right. Gifted 5 subs. Thank you very much. C Furio dropped a $10 rant, said, love you, Dave. Todd 12 with a $5 rant says, such great, incredible info. I appreciate you both very much. Thank you, Todd. Dalebox1 with a $17 rant says, appreciate you, Dave and Patriot. Thank you, Dalebox. Good to see you. And ML Morris 2424 with a $10 rant says, seems like we should take today's news as a good step forward in disclosure. Just remember the phrase, we have it all. That might be the rant of the week. You nailed it. Yep.
Nailed it.
Yep. Skyvault1 with a $1 rant. If you were offered a news anchor position on a major news station, would you take it full control? No. Patriot?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
If you were offered a news anchor position on a major news station, would you take it under full control?
No.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I can't I can't imagine a scenario, first of all, where they would ever pick me for something like that. But even if they did, no, I'm pretty much married to what I do. I love being able to talk about the truth. I don't want to be controlled by anybody.
Yeah.
Or
there's no way I'm sitting in a chair for 2 hours and having makeup done and then reading off a teleprompter.
And reading off a prompter. No, that's not my style. No.
I mean, I would kill to have a research assistant. That would be amazing. But other than that, no. Denise Volbrack with a $10 rant. Thank you, gentlemen. Always a great show. Remember, everyone, Patriots are in control. God won. We are simply watching it play out. Control your emotions. Control your mind. We got this. Amen, Denise. And Parkmon won. $5 rant. Thanks so much, Dave and Patriot. Thank you very much. Patriot, final thoughts, next show, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and by the way, I just I did see a rant come through from Q Patriot Angel, just said tip, so thank you. I appreciate that. And if there were any that I missed, I do apologize, folks. It's as people know, I get so wrapped up in the conversation that I oftentimes, whether I'm hosting or whether I'm a guest, I forget to keep an eye on that stuff. And for whatever reason, I go back at the end of the show and sometimes I miss things. So I do apologize. But final thoughts. I thought this was a great conversation. Hopefully everybody out there agreed. Like I said in the beginning of the show, Dave and I never plan anything. We really don't. It's unlike any other show that I do. I mean, we both work with Mike King, and generally speaking, those shows primarily are Mike's presentation, but there's still a decent amount of preparation that goes into that, and other shows that I do with other guests. And I know Dave feels the same way about the people that he works with. But for some reason, when we get together, we can both basically just show up to the live. And of course, we have our notes, we have our things that points that we want to make, but we never really have an outline of where we're going to go with the show, or very rarely. And even when we do have one, we kind of drift away from it, like we did tonight, and we go off on these tangents. But the beauty of it all is that, like I said, that the conversation always finds us, and people really tend to benefit from it. And I know that when I sit down with you, I learned so much. I mean, I listen to your work all the time, and I've been a huge proponent of you right from the moment that we actually got connected. I've been singing your praises, man. You're amazing. But being able to sit down and to just bounce ideas off of each other and to have it flow so smoothly it's truly incredible. It's something that I really value, and I know that the audience does as well. People, and I, as time has gone on, because my personal time to do podcasts and to do shows has kind of ironically dwindled over the years. I always anticipated that as my kids got older, I would have more free time and I'd have more ability to do this type of stuff. It's actually been just the opposite. So I've had to be a little bit more selective about who I do shows with, and just I just throw that out there just so you know, man. It's a huge compliment that we get together and we sit down every couple of weeks because I really value these conversations, and it's been amazing. It really has, and I think that we covered the waterfront pretty well tonight, and hopefully folks enjoyed. And as far as where we're at right now, I think we've said it all basically, especially during the opening segment tonight. But just don't get married to your expectations. As we all struggle with that. We all want to see the end game play out as soon as possible. But the reality of the matter is that there are levels and stages that we have to go through. And the deeper we get into the operation, the more we come to appreciate all of the things that we bemoan along the way. We look back in the rear view and we go, oh, yeah, it was a lot better that way. So try to just maintain that attitude moving forward. And honestly, just celebrate the victories. That's the other thing I've been reminding my audience to do. I did a coffee chat not too long ago. I actually did a couple of them in the wake of the Epstein files releases, and just talking kind of stream of consciousness about my thoughts and feelings about where we're at. And it's important we know ultimately where we're headed, and we all want to get there, and we all want to just put our foot down on the accelerator and get there as fast as we can. But we also have to come to accept the nature of fifth generation war, the pattern recognition that we talked about earlier in the show. And I think the more that you can kind of check yourself and protect your mind and avoid at all costs developing expectations, the more at peace you're going to be throughout the entirety of this process. And the rest of it we'll just we'll navigate together. But take that victory lap, enjoy the moments, folks, because this is where we truly are living through history right now. And I just feel honored to have a seat at the table. So thank you, Dave. Really appreciate you hosting tonight. Did a great job as per usual. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
Thanks, brother. There's not a whole lot I can add to that, my friend, except to say that I couldn't agree with you more. Much like you, even though I do this full time, I keep a relatively small circle of people that I podcast with. You're certainly at the top. Like I said, it's to echo what you said. Not to take away from anybody else. Joe and I have something special when we get on the air, but
you enjoy it.
I appreciate that. But there's something to be said. Joe will be the first one to tell you this. He and I joke about it all the time. We're both like very anxious people. And so even though we do the same thing every Tuesday and Saturday, and we have a show, it's like the morning, like, oh my God, we're going to do put this together, and it always works out. Like we keep telling each other, like we should probably at some point work on our mindset, because it always works.
Yeah, you guys.
But when I work with you, man, there's an enjoyment and a comfort there that I know, we can kind of identify some topics. We're going to be on the same page. We're going to have a great conversation. I think we both benefit from it as much as the audience does. It's
Sure.
Like I said, I don't, especially with you. It's great that the audience loves it. That's why we're here. But for me and you, man, there's a thing that happens for me. Like I said, it's I don't want to call it a therapy session, but it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable just to sit here and talk to you. Like I said, especially going back to the fact that I think most people know this. Like you were one of those people many, many years ago in what I call the dark ages of my awakening. I've told people the stories of me as sitting in a dark room at 3 a.m, listening to your podcast when it was just your voice.
Yeah.
So you've helped me
Seems
immensely.
like forever ago, man.
Yeah, it does.
I'm actually coming up on 5 years. It's hard to believe.
Wow. Yeah. And I've pretty much been listening to you from the beginning. I can't believe it's been 5 years. And, 21 and 22, when a lot of us were alone on an island. I know I was, at least I speak for myself. Before a lot of these communities really came together, whether you're in front of the mic or in the chat, the work you did and putting yourself out there early on is a big reason a lot of us are here. So, thank you for that, man. And that's why for me, like I said, it's just so gratifying and so cool that we have the kind of relationship we do. And I know that does come through to people. We all get to read the comments and the emails and everything. And I know that people put, you and I at kind of the top of their list in terms of when I get feedback on shows. So that's super important to me and truly gratifying. So, and the fact, like I said, that it means so much to the audience is obviously of the utmost importance to both Patriot and myself. So I will leave it at that, man. As far as the show, yeah, I thought this was one of our most complete shows. If I'm being biased, so be it. But I think Patriot, I think you summed it up perfectly. Today was a very, very, very important day, and the first of many. Not the first of many, but I think another huge step forward. I think today is one of those days where you wake up, you're like, all right, what's going to happen? And we had two major things happening. That's just going to grow from here. So I'll leave it at that. You nailed it perfectly on your final thoughts, and that'll do it. Oh, anything else you got coming up? You want to?
Let's see here. Let me take a quick peek. Well, of course, I've got Mike on Monday. Everybody knows. And I'm going to be doing a show with on I think it's redpills.net. It's Jeff Spike Wong. I actually was on his show once before, and we had a really great conversation. This is the platform. I've never actually worked with Josh Reed, but this is like his channel, and I guess Jeff works with him. And I have a lot of respect for Josh. I think he's a great anon. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a show with him next Thursday, and who knows, maybe I'll pepper in another coffee chat. I've been trying to get back to that. It's like I said, it's always a time issue for me, but if ever I have the time in the morning to sit down and drink my coffee and just share the moment with my audience, that's what I love to do. And honestly, I've never really fancied myself as being some great mind inside of the Q movement or anything along those lines. I mean, I know people resonate with my work, but I've never put myself. I mean, I look at people like you, and I look at other individuals like Stormy, and I'm like, man, these guys are incredible. But one thing I've known that I've always been able to do is just to speak openly and articulate what I'm thinking and feeling about where we're at. And much to my surprise, I came to realize that it resonated with so many individuals out there that ultimately built my platform. So, I'm trying to make an effort to kind of move back in that direction, to dedicate a little bit more time for that. And last couple of coffee chats, I mean, they're not everybody's cup of tea. Some people, they just want to sit down and they want to listen to Dave and I spitball. They want to listen to Mike King and I, or some people really like my solo shows where I just do analysis. So they don't necessarily get the highest amount of views, but I have to tell you, as far as the comments and as far as the feedback that I get, it's my coffee chats by far that are the most gratifying for me. So, not promising anything, but hopefully over the next couple of days, I'll be able to get another one out.
Well, again, man, don't sell yourself short. I consider you to be one of the finest minds of this movement. And honestly, dude, as somebody that doesn't do it that often, you're good in any forum you're in, but to be able to, I don't think people realize how difficult it is to do a solo show and as polished and well as you do. So dude, I still enjoy when you do a solo show. It's not an easy thing to do. There's a feeling of like when you have somebody else on the screen, there's always a safety net. There's never going to be an awkward silence or whatever. Yeah. Being able to sit there and just talk from the heart and do it with in a polished way with intellect is certainly a talent, man. So I know there's a lot of people out there that are appreciative of that. So absolutely. And as far as over here, guys, of course, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll have the open lines, the call-in show. Saturday night, we'll have D-Class at 8 p.m. And Sunday, stay tuned for the time. I still got to figure that out. But sometime Sunday night will be the launch of a new show that I'm working on with the great Eric Carlson and, of course, Patrick Gunnels called Breaking the System. And that is going to be a financial-focused Anon show. So kind of the 40,000-foot view from 3 Anons of how we believe the latest financial news breaks down. The first one on Sunday will be regarding Trump's sovereign wealth fund. Cool. Very interesting stuff based on the work of Eric Carlson. So keep an eye out for time on that. That's going to do it for tonight, guys. Thank you all very much. One more time, if you could hit that positive affirmation button wherever you're watching, we greatly appreciate it. Let me, of course, thank Carrie Cat, Claudia Doug, Magadai1776, our admins and mods for all their help. And, of course, Patriot Underground for being here. We will see you guys in 2 weeks for the next show with Patriot Underground. And until then, guys, we will catch you on the next one. Have a fantastic night. Take care, everybody.
This song's from my old one-eyed father. Came back from the service with one eye. He never complained about it my whole life. And all the stuff I do for the great mighty USO and all the good work they do for our fantastic military. It's all in dedication to my father. And I'd like to do this song for him tonight. American girls, American guys will always stand up and salute and always recognize when we see old glory flying. There's a lot of men dead, so we can sleep in peace at night when we lay down our head. My daddy served in the army. We lost his right eye and he flew our flag out in our yard. Till the day that he died, he wanted my mother, my brother, my sister and me to grow up and live forever in the land of the free. His nation and love is falling under attack. A mighty sucker punch came flying in from somewhere in the back. As soon as we could see clearly through our big black eye, man, we lit up your world like a 4th of July. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name top of his list. And the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist. Eagle will fly, it's gonna be hell. Then you and my freedom start ringing that bell. It'll feel like the whole wide world raining down on you. Cross take courtesy of the red, white, and blue. They're here tonight, right out there, oh, and justice will be served, battle will rage. Good guys win every time you rattle their cage. Man, you'll be sorry you mess with my U.S. of A. We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name on top of his list. And the Statue of Liberty started shaking fast. The eagle will fly, there's gonna be hell when you hear all the freedom start ringing her bell. It'll feel like the whole wide world raining down on you. And it's from take courtesy of the red, white, blue. Yeah. Oh, my red, white, blue. God bless our military. Thank you. God bless America.
That's treason. That's treason. They say, holy shit, they caught us. They caught us.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
And they know the judgment day shall come.